Chapter 61. Within the military formation in the western border, Landao Talai took the lead, rushed to the green-crowned stag, and killed the flag holding the flag with one sword, causing the flag in his hand to fall. The green king flag fell, and before Blue Dao Talai could breathe a sigh of relief, he raised his mind again, because even the battlefield in front of him was a mess, such as the brown, green, white badger flag of the Leiden family, and Brack, the city of Cock Valley. The purple unicorn of the SI family and the open-screen peacock flag of the Chaliot family in the Silver Mountain City. These flags began to sway and retreat eastward, but there were still several flags firmly in front of them. The Lannister family's lion roaring flag and a yellow-bottomed three-dog flag floated on the battlefield. Under the flag, a large knight wearing a barrel-shaped helmet and armored slammed the horse with a gun and a horse, leading his army to rush towards Landao Talai. Landao looked at the burly knight and recognized the other party's identity at a glance. Greg Klakang, the Magic Mountain in Klakang Fort in the western region, charged at himself. He could be his opponent at this age. Is it? Can't retreat a little? Ha! Landao Jiao yelled lightly, holding his sword to activate the war horse, but when he rushed, he heard a roar sounding from the side, followed by a cavalry in yellow-clothed turban coming out from the side, and he caught the attack from Demon Mountain himself. Wow! As soon as this yellow cavalry appeared, he shot arrows with his short dorn bow before receiving the enemy. A thin layer of arrows grew on the body of Demon Mountain in a blink of an eye. Donner? Landao looked at it with a question mark, and then stopped carefully. The army in front of him did not have a flag, but their outfit was very Dornished. They were wearing simple composite armor, wrapped in yellow headscarf, and rode Dornish horses. The horse is small but very flexible and endurance. After the yellow-clothed Dorn cavalry shot a round of arrow rain, the team of Demon Mountain was at least half of them. Demon Mountain himself carried the arrow rain with his thick armor, but the black war horse under his crotch was not that lucky. The man stood up in the neighing sound, lifted his master off the horse, and was shot to death by arrows. The Demon Mountain, like an arrow pig, fell down from its horse, let out and roar, threw away the knight's big gun, pulled out a big sword covered with dense patterns from its waist, turned around to face a yellow knight, moved flexibly to the left side of the horse, avoid the spear that the horse knight was stuck under his right armpit, and then use a sword to directly cut off the opponent's mount's front foot. The deadly knight on the horse's back leaned forward and fell off the horse. Father! A woman's scream rushed out in the battle formation, and another yellow knight rushed out with a spear to rescue the yellow knight who fell from the horse's back. Go away! Demon Mountain roared, raised the big sword in his hand, cut off the yellow knight's spear, and tried to get closer to the killer again, but the opponent skillfully pulled the horse away. The battlefield was originally separated by the Yellow Knights and the Demon Mountain team, but as the Demon Mountain was trapped by the Yellow Knights, Kevin, who was wearing plate armor under the lion roared, saw this and quickly directed the family knights to rescue. And Landao, a subsidiary of the Steady Hunter, did not hesitate to urge him to ride on the horse. No matter where these Dornist emerged, as long as they attack Lannister, they will be allies and they must not be annihilated. The two sides were in a melee again. Leono led the infantry to follow him at this time. Looking at the chaotic battlefield, he immediately commanded the infantry to form a formation and poured arrow rain towards the lions roaring in the distance. Leonor held a large red and white bow in the chaos, took out a three-edged arrow like a short spear, aimed at Kevin, who was under the lion's flag dozens of steps away, and directly blazed the full moon. With the sound of strings, the elderly veteran trembled under the lion's flag dozens of steps away, and the plate armor on his chest was pierced by a heavy arrow, and a mouthful of blood was sprayed out, and then slowly fell down from the back of the horse. Ha! In the chaos, the Count of Jiaoling Landao took the lead again. Taking advantage of the death of Kfeng, he knocked away two western knights, rushed to the lion's roar, and cut off the flagpole with one sword. With the red lion flag falling, Lannister's army could no longer hold on, and its morale collapsed in the end. Not to mention ordinary soldiers, even the knights began to pull out their horses and escape. Leonor shot Kevin down with a heavy arrow and held up the big red and white bow in his hand and commanded the army to continue pursuing the fleeing western army, chasing the western army into the deep crypt city. In the deep cave city, the Leiden family, who were emblematic of the brown, green and white badger flag, saw that there was no hope of surrender, so they could only lead their troops to defend a main tower and resist to the death. Street fighting is even more tragic than field fighting. Leonor did not want to hurt 1,000 enemies and suffered 800 of them, so he ordered the Western Knights to surrender, but the premise was that the Western Knights would take out the head of a Western noble as a letter of surrender. With Leonor's promise, the knights in the deep cave city rebelled one after another. The Leiden family became the first family to be destroyed in the Western War. The men, women, young and old families, together with their relatives, were killed without losing their lives, and all of them became inside the city. The knight's letter of confession: if this is not the case, the knights will die together. The battle was much smoother than I thought. Leonor didn't even have time to let the coalition vanguard behind him turn around, and completely captured the deep crypt with a small amount of troops. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. I'm not mature yet. The reason why he was able to win was because Westeros's war command system was not mature, and soldiers and knights belonged to different families. The generals of the war relied on bloodline and courage, rather than command ability, did not pay attention to discipline and tactics, and had no any organization can speak of. Although the combat system is immature, if you win, you will win. In the main tower of Deep Crypto City, Leono sat in the main position and began to summarize the war. After the war, he rewarded all parties to join the army, and recorded the collective merits of his direct infantry under his command once, each of whom rewarded a golden dragon. Landeo Talai was the main general. Led the army to charge, and earned a merit in the individual's flag and rewarded 300 households with fiefs. As for the 300 knights in Jiaoling, that was the Talai family's own business. In addition to the fighting coalition forces, Leono also pardoned the knights who had committed a petition and asked them to make another contribution to conquer Jiaogu City, Yinshan City, and other cities in the western border for the coalition forces. His pardon order and declaration are still valid for other Western knights. Western knights can be pardoned by taking out the head of a Western nobleman. After killing the Viscount, they can get the title of Viscount and territory. When killing the Earl, they can get the title of Earl and territory. There is no false deception. Under his effective military order, Jiaogu City and Yinshan City in the west quickly fell, and the Brax family, Shiliat family, and the Farii family all became the condemnation of the Western Knights. A large number of Western Knights changed their flags and entered Leono's command. Among them, Abal Kalangzi, the Knight of Deep Cave City, was named the new Silver by Leono by killing Helchalat, the Earl of Silver Mountain City. The Earl of Shancheng, the territory of Yinshan City, belonged to the royal family's direct jurisdiction, which attracted the attention of other Western knights and began to attack the territory of other Western nobles. A large number of Western-bound noble territories were captured, and a large number of Western-bound knights were sealed. The northern front of Qian City collapsed completely, and Leonor's troops further expanded, and the troops began to approach Lannister Lane. Chapter 62. In the afternoon, dragging his tired body out of the castle gate, Dickon turned his head and looked at the main castle behind him that once belonged to the Leiden family. It seemed like a different life. When he shook his head and woke up, he looked at the city that had just been washed away by blood. Feel confused about where you should go next? Mr. Dickon. A shout came from behind. Dickon turned his head and saw a young man with black hair and brown eyes and light armor running out. Mr. Arad. Dickon nodded to the young man. Your Majesty asked me to tell you that your father is now stationed in the east of the city. You can go there to find him. Remember to come back in 3 days. Arad conveyed Leonor's notice. Okay. Dickon was shocked when he heard this and found a place to go. It has been 3 days since he entered the deep crypt. In the past 3 days, Dickon Tally, as the flag bearer, has been following Leonor to help him handle various documents. It was not until today that he was ordered to take a leave. Didn't know how he came here in the past 3 days. One letter after another was sent to him from all directions, and he took apart and watched it. He picked up important news and reported it over and over again. Even though he was strictly required to train by his father since childhood, the past 3 days still made Dickon Tally feel a deep sense of powerlessness. After receiving Arad's advice, he bowed his head without even saying thanks. He hurried towards the east of the city. In the east of the city, Dickon leaned against the soldiers in the city and successfully found his father's temporary residence here, inside the house of a merchant. Father. Dickon found his father, Earl Landeo, and saw that his father changed into a cloth outfit, which was rare for his father who had always believed in iron-bloodedism. How is it? Landeo glanced at his son who returned home and asked in the first place. What? Ah. Is it your Majesty? Dickon subconsciously replied. When he looked up and saw his father's frowning brow, he suddenly felt nervous, stood attentive, and replied in a soldier's posture. Your Majesty is a very important person who cares about communication and asks his men to write important matters into letters to report them. You have been dealing with these letters. Landau's frowning brows just relaxed when he saw his son's straight look. Yes. Dickon nodded. It's very good. It's helpful to let you learn from Master Elaine learn the knowledge. Landau nodded with satisfaction, happy that his education for his children came in handy, and couldn't wait. What letters have you read these days? Whose are they? What is the content? Can you tell the content of those letters? Father, don't you know? Dickon was a little surprised. I have been stationed here these days and have not received any news from the outside world. I only know that His Majesty has issued some announcements in the city and accepted the surrender of some Western knights. This is a reasonable approach. If this is not the case, we will fall into a very serious situation. A difficult situation. Landau said what he knew. So that's the case. Your Majesty did it. He asked the surrendered Western knights to have to offer the heads of a Western noble. It was a bit cruel. Dickon expressed his opinion. Cruel? In my opinion, this is the greatest kindness. The kindness towards the enemy will initially turn into cruelty towards oneself. Only in this way can we pacify the western frontier as quickly as possible. Landau scolded Dickon for his meaningless kindness. Once all the western regions are killed, the western regions will resist and die, and more people will be killed. I understand this, but I think it is better to treat a nobleman than to be killed in battle. Dickon said it later, and it was a little difficult to say. He felt that the orders of His Majesty the King were tantamount to inciting knights to murder the nobleman. Haha, it's better to be killed by a group of lowly people? What is noble and what is lowly? Don't learn from your stupid brother, he will only enjoy the romance, while you will only be brave and fierce. You must treat knowledge and strength correctly, and use these to improve one's cognition and vision, change oneself, and don't indulge in a certain environment. Landau felt that Dickon had become weak. He paid too much attention to his courage and martial arts in the past, and neglected him to recognize it. Teaching on knowledge. Yes, yes. Dickon could only nod in the face of his strong father. Okay, don't tell me the letters you deal with. Your Majesty will focus on cultivating you for my sake. You must be grateful and not disclose the letters you see to others to avoid leaking secrets. Do you understand? Landau's earnest lesson. Yes. Dickon nodded quickly. Let your heart be careful and be a brave person. This is not to make you brave and fierce, but to learn to accept everything and play your role in these things. The future of the Tally family is in you. Yes, Father, I will definitely serve your Majesty as much as I can. Dickon nodded again. Then tell me, what are your hobbies? Your Majesty's hobby. Dickon's eyes were straight. He had been following the king for the past few days, and he had not seen anything interested in it. Other nobles would always look for women after completing their conquest. Or drink, or eat a lot, but he doesn't seem to have these needs. He always gives orders to count the land, population, manor, and knights here, and asks the knights to complete the occupation and killing of a certain place. Leave the nobles. So, you haven't relaxed your heart yet. Landau rolled his eyes. Father, I will be attentive in the future. Dickon did not dare to refute, and suddenly he thought, Father, I remembered it. His Majesty seems to be very interested in magic. Magic? Landau was shocked when he heard this. Yes, magic. Every time your Majesty rests, he always puts a very strange position, crosses his legs together, ties his hands in front of his lower abdomen, and then slowly falls asleep, as if he is doing a very strange ceremony. Dickon recalled every time Leonore rested. Okay, I understand. Landau nodded slightly when he heard this. He was a shallow believer of the 7 gods and a fan of magic. He once asked a warlock to use magic tricks to solve some problems, but all failed, but it did not prevent him from doing so. Still believe in magic. You must pay close attention to your Majesty's hobbies and needs in the future. That is the direction you can work hard and the way you can make the Tally family more prosperous. Landau asked his son. Yes, Father, do we want to recommend some sorcerers for your Majesty? Dickon tried to ask. That's a stupid approach. Flattering the monarch like this will only make the monarch feel that his privacy has been discovered. You have to learn to use your brain. Landau had a headache. Why did Dickon so stupid? What should I do? Dickon was also furious. Idiot, go and contact your colleagues around you first, and then tell them about our Tally family's ancestors, Hunter Hailong and Horn Haley Dong. Lan Dao had no choice but to teach Dickon how to use it in person, the method of meeting the monarch's preferences. Chapter 63. Just as Lan Dao Tally taught his son in person and taught him how to meet the monarch's preferences, Leonor put down his complicated government affairs and took Brienne and other guards out of the castle, go to Camp Dorn in the west of the city. In the camp of Dorn, soldiers of the Sand Snake Order wrapped in yellow turban put Leonor into the camp and notified Oberon, who was stationed, that Prince Dorn, nicknamed Red Viper, came out to greet him personally. "Welcome, welcome, my most noble king." Oberon spread his wings and even hugged Leonor. "My Highness, how are you injured?" Leonor hugged Oberon, feeling that in addition to the strong smell of spice, there was also a strong smell of blood on his body. "Okay, it can't be better. It would be even better if you can leave Tywin to me for the same." Oberlin laughed. On the battlefield 3 days ago, the Sand Snake group led by Oberon appeared on the battlefield and fought against Lannister's army with Lando Tally. In the melee, Grego Clegane was captured. This incident the Red Viper was very happy, so he welcomed Leonor with an intimate attitude. "That depends on your own ability. Gregor, did you kill?" Leonor smiled, did not agree or object, and asked about the situation in Demon Mountain. "Of course, no, I want that guy to die immediately but not die." Oberon said the most gritty words with a smile. The Martell family, especially Oberon Martell, hated the Demon Mountain Grego Clegane. He deserved it. Leonor only replied, and then relaxed Oberon's gritting expression. "Haha, my majesty, you are the most special majesty I have ever seen. I like what you do to the nobles in the west, which is something I want to do but cannot." Oberon smiled and praised Leonor for asking for the western region. The letter of the night submitted. Now most of the western nobles live in terror. I feel very accomplished to make you happy by His Highness Oberon. Leonor smiled. "Come on, Your Majesty, don't go around in circles with me, tell me." Oberon put away his smile. "I'm really just here to see you and the Demon Mountain. I've had too many things in the past 3 days." Leonor smiled as usual, but in his heart, he felt that Oberon, a man born in the year of the dog, turned his back on his face and turned his back on him. "Why don't you believe in books? Then do you want to see the Demon Mountain?" Oberon saw Leonor's expression as usual, but he felt a little bit of evil. Of course. Leonor felt Oberon's interest. Was he going to stimulate himself with the tragic situation of Demon Mountain and treat himself as someone who has never seen the world? "Then please come with me." Oberon waved. Oberon led Leonor and his guards into the camp, came to a tent, and brought him in. There was a strong smell of blood in the tent, and 3 Dorn women were facing the Demon Hill Grego Clegane tortures. The entire man in Demon Mountain has been destroyed. His spine was broken by the Dornas and he has become paralyzed, but he has not died. He has been revived by the medicine and suffered a lot of torture. His eyes were plucked out and his tongue was cut off and the ears were filled with lead. It's really miserable, but Leonor ignored him directly. Who told the Demon Mountain to do nothing? He fell to death by Rhaega's 2 children and raped and killed Ilya Martell. The people of the Martell family deserve it no matter how they treat him. How is it? Oberon asked Leonor how he felt, with the bloody magic mountain. Not really. Leonor replied without blinking. He turned his head and glanced in the tent, and saw a pile of armor and swords stained with blood, and his eyes suddenly moved. What are you looking at? A tall figure stopped in front of Leonor. Who are you? Leonor raised his gaze and looked at the woman in front of him. He saw that he had black skin, a strong figure, and was quite ugly, just like Brienne. Respect the king. Brienne's hoarse voice also came at the right time. The female knight pressed the hilt of the sword around her waist, but Leonor raised his hand and held it down. This is Obiah Shad, my daughter. Oberon also explained the identity of the woman. Those are the weapons and armor of Demon Mountain. Leonor waved Brienne back, ignoring the fierce Obiah, but instead raised his chin to point at the pile of armor and swords in the tent. Yes, that sword is good, it's the Valyrian steel sword, do you want it? Oberon asked. No, I just saw that sword looks familiar, and it felt like the ice of the Stark family. Leonor shook his head directly. If you want it, take it away. Oberon thought Leonor was looking for trouble, so he spoke with disdain. Leonor looked at Oberon who turned against him again, his mouth twitched, but ignored him, went up and picked up the big sword, handed the wolf head at the hilt to Oberon. "What do you think is this?" Oberon glanced at the wolf head on the hilt of Valilia's steel sword, and his face changed slightly. He had been tortured by the Demon Mountain before, but he didn't notice that this big sword might be the coldness of the Stark family. Ice. What's this sword? Leono glanced at the paralyzed motion and had no ability to speak. He didn't say the second half of the words. It's meaningless to ask this now. Motion's tongue was cut and he couldn't speak anymore. You take this sword. Oberon was unwilling to get involved with Leonor, so he just asked him to take the sword and leave. Okay, okay. Are you planning to torture him here for the rest of your life? Leonor saw Oberon driving the people, and stopped when he saw that he was ready, took Hanbing away and asked at the same time. Call us when I go to K-Rock Fort. Oberon only said one sentence. Yes, well, sorry, I said this for my brother Robert. There was something wrong with his attitude back then, which is something that cannot be explained. Leonor apologized to Oberon before leaving. Although Robert did not participate in the Demon Mountain rape and killing Ilya, he later pardoned Demon Mountain and said inappropriate words. What do you mean by these words? Oberon was detonated by Leonor's words. It's nothing, it's also an attitude. Just think I'm scared by the appearance of the Demon Mountain. Leono said as he glanced at the unhealthy Demon Mountain on the ground. He reasoned, and it looked nothing. If he imagined that he was tortured, he would be fine. It's me who hates chills, quite aversion. Roll. Let's go. Leonor didn't care and asked Brienne and others to leave the tent. Father, this guy. The ugly Obeah came to Oberon. Kill him for me and throw the body to feed the dog. Oberon couldn't breathe his anger, and looked at the Demon Mountain on the ground, with an indescribable disgust. It was no longer interesting to torture such a guy. Yes. Obeah obeyed the order. Go and get Neme and Terani again, and you and they will go to the main fort with me. Oberon became more and more angry the more he thought about it. Father, do you want to urge that guy to send troops? Obeah tried to ask. No, I'll find you a job. Oberon decided to vent his anger. Chapter 64. After leaving the Dornaz Sand Snake Camp, Leonor handed the great sword Ice in his hand to the King's Guard Alex Oakhurt, and then spoke to Brienne. Brienne, you will ride back to the main fort first, and let the Minsk bachelor send a crow to the River City, and ask if Lord Ed Stark has been there. Yes. After Brienne received the order, she immediately activated her horse to move forward and return to the main fort to pass the order. Leonor watched Brienne ride away first, then glanced at the big sword in Alex's hand, and sighed helplessly. Brother Ed, I really helped you, brother. You have such a good character, but don't die. If Ed, a loyal fan of the Baratheon family, dies, it will be a lot more trouble for the Iron Throne to govern the northern border in the future. Leonor sighed in his heart that life and death were impermanent, and prayed with some luck, and took a dozen guards led by 2 Imperial guards to rush back to the main fort. As he walked, he suddenly heard a few whizzing sounds in his ears. Ring. Arrow. Leono, who has been practicing bows and arrows for many years, is very sensitive to the coming sound and immediately rests his body on the horse's back, and the guards behind him are not so lucky. The pain was heard endlessly, and the royal guards Alex Oakhurt and Glossbron were shot in many places on their faces and throats, while other guards, people or horses were shot in many places. The horses neighed and retreated, and even stood up and lifted the guards above them. In the chaos, the war horse under Leono was shot into the eye with an arrow, and the pain was softened. He was also pushed off the horse. Finally, he waited until the arrow rain passed, and looked up and saw that the streets in front of him were all over the streets. Many figures appeared. All of these figures were strong men. They wore simple leather and wooden armor, threw away their long bows, drew out their long swords, and ran towards Leono, who was being turned upside down by the horse. Come over! Ah! The roar suddenly broke out, and the blonde and strong royal guard Alex Oakhurt stood up from the chaotic man with 3 branches on his face and 2 arrows on his throat. The white-clad emperor, who was wearing white armor, stood up from the chaotic horse. Lin Tiwei held the great sword Hanbing in one hand and his own steel sword in the other, and rushed towards the assassins. Leonor hid under the horse, heard Alex's charge roar, looked up at the big man Ang Zhang rushing out, and his heart couldn't help but feel excited, but instead of pulling out the mace to help the battle, he took it off from the dead saddle. Bow and arrow, directly draw the bow and hit the arrow. Take it. A assassinator's right eye was pierced by an arrow, and the seriously injured king's guard Alex Ogert's left sword was knocked out, but he held the great sword ice in both hands and stabbed him with one sword. The man slashed his shoulders into 2 strangles, which shocked the other assassins. Leonor fired arrows repeatedly, cooperating with Alex Ogert to kill the assassin. The guards next to him reacted and pulled out the sword from his waist to help the battle. However, in the melee, the Imperial Guards but Losbron covered the arrow's throat and turned around and ran. The scene was too chaotic. Although Alex Ogert was brave and terrifying, he only had his last breath. After killing an assassin, he used up his strength and staggered 2 steps before going directly to the ground. Kneel. Leono saw a despicable assassin pierced his chest with a sword. He also shot the assassin to death, but there were 7 or 8 assassins left at the scene, and his guards were dead after just a while. Death, wounded, and fleeing. Looking around and seeing the miserable situation of the guards beside him, Leonor was not discouraged. With a casual move, the nail hammer on the back of the dead horse flew automatically. Just as he was about to fight the remaining assassins alone, he swished and swished. The sound of arrows flew over his head, scaring him down. Swoosh, arrows flew over the top of his head. Leonor looked up and saw that the assassin who had run near him had been shot down. He heard the sound of horse hooves and turned around and saw one. The agile yellow Dorn horse ran wildly before it, and was so fierce that it was tied up by the reins. "My Majesty, you are in trouble." Oberon pulled the reins, controlled the horse under his crotch to Leonor, and joking around him twice, and on his side, 3 skilled people were all skilled. The Dorn warrior rode his horse to attack, and even further away, the Dorn warriors shot arrows to support him on the way. The 3 Dorn warriors who were in the front were Obaya, who Leonor had seen. The black-skinned female sand snake waved her spear, poked down an assassin and knocked down another assassin. The other 2 tall and slender female Donones waved their scimitars and cut down the ending assassins while striking the horse. "Leave a few survivors." Leono pressed the mace in his hand, and looked at the battle that was about to end in the field in an instant, and couldn't help but roar. "Stay alive!" Oberon also shouted. The 2 female donors holding scimitars heard the cry and quickly put away the scimitar in their hands. One female donors threw out a long whip and slapped a whip flower, and the whip tip wrapped around the right side of an assassin. The foot dragged him to run around the ground with a war horse, and crushed several people. The other one sat on the horse, pulled out the flying knife from his clothes, threw it out directly, and nailed the 3 assassins who were trying to resist one by one. Fall. These 3 girls are so awesome. Leonor looked at the 3 female sand snakes who were attacking on the horse and couldn't help but scream in his heart until Oberon on the back of the horse beside him spoke to him. "How is it?" Oberon looked down at Leonor's surprised expression and asked with the corner of his mouth. "Awesome." Leono expressed his feelings truthfully. "Your guard is not very good." Oberon glanced at the people with arrows on the ground and sighed with his lips. Leonor didn't say anything. He glanced at the guards on the ground and strode to the dead Alex Ogert. He looked at the half-kneeled royal guard, thinking about his usual quiet words. His style is a little sad. "There is another one, Berlos Braun." Leonor raised his head, remembered another royal guard, looked up and found his body, but instead the Dorn knights in the distance dragged their horses and dragged them away. "Come here by someone." While speaking, the Dorn knights in the distance had arrived, dragged back the royal guard Boros who was trying to escape, and threw the unlucky guy with an arrow in his throat to Leonor. Leonor realized that Bolas' escape was gone, and he no longer had any worries about him. He stepped forward and stepped on the grey-haired Imperial Guard and asked directly. "Do you know these assassins?" The grey-haired Bolas raised his face and did not dare to look at the young man in front of him. He coughed twice, and blood oozed out of his throat and corners of his mouth. "Do you want me to help? You don't seem to be good at interrogation." Oberon jumped off his horse and asked Leonor. "Help me." Leonor accepted Oberon's kindness. As for whether Boros would be as miserable as Demon Mountain, he had no need to pity this guy. "Are those going to be tried together?" Oberon pointed to the other assassins caught by his sand snake daughter. "Take a review together, but you will take it to the main castle of the city." Leonor nodded affirmatively. "No problem, I'm happy to serve the king." Oberon smiled. Chapter 65. Oberon's illegitimate daughters of Sand Snake did have something torture. They took turns to interrogate Boros and the assassins, and then compared the interrogation content with different people in order to find out what they could not match. The local area tortures it in detail, and soon the truth was made. This group of assassins is not a killer group like the Faceless, but a knight who is loyal to the West. They try to reverse the defeat in the West by killing Leono and have been monitoring Leono in the main for a long time. As for Bolus, this guy was the royal guard who relied on Circe to enter. He did not betray Leonor, but he was not loyal to his duties, and simply escaped at the last minute. Leonor had just arranged the funeral for Oakherd and other guards who died in order to protect themselves, and gave their families corresponding rewards. Hearing the truth found by Oberon, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. "You are not angry?" Oberon showed a strange expression. He was almost dead for life just now, but now he can still laugh. "Why are you angry? The western frontier is like a beast gradually falling into a desperate situation. The more crazy the things they do, the more correct my attack steps are," Leonor explained to Oberon with a smile. Now, it was Oberon's turn to speak. "I have arranged for someone to investigate the Deep Mill City, and limit the Knights of Deep Mill City to hand over suspicious personnel within a specified period of time. Your Highness, your daughters will be responsible for the subsequent review operation. Is it okay?" Leonor: "Now also I can't find any good torture officers, and I hope Oberon's sand snakes will come and help again. Of course, they won't go back after the trial." Oberon showed a strange smile. "Hey?" Leonor showed a question mark. "My Majesty, I cannot rest assured that a noble man like you has no reliable guard." Oberon spoke in a greasy tone, "So I decided to send my beloved sand snakes to you as a guard, how about it?" Oberon's previous words were very slick, which aroused Brienne next to him with displeasure, but when he heard the words behind him, the female knight turned her hopeful eyes to Leonor, hoping that His Majesty the King could refuse. "Those sand snakes are dangerous in themselves and are not suitable for being guards at all. If the sand snakes are willing, then stay." Leonor ignored Brienne's gaze. He really needed appropriate guards now, and the noble knights in the Stormland and River Bay were unreliable. Although the Martell family of Dorne is connected with Targaryen, they will not rebel without being sure of their personality. Even if they rebel, they will use Oberuna to hold a grudge against his sister Ilia in N years. These illegitimate daughters are also very good hostages. Give yourself a few years to turn the beautiful ones into lovers and give birth to a few illegitimate children. Then see who his grandfather will help. Then let's just say that I'll keep Obaya, name, and Tarani by your side." Oberon didn't know Leonor's idea, but just thought it was because he successfully inserted the stake into him. "Around me." "Okay." Leonor accepted happily. Oberon left the 3 illegitimate daughters with Leonor, and successfully left after successfully leaving the stake. As soon as he left, Arad hurriedly ran in and reported to Leonor. "Your Majesty, there are letters from the King's Landing City. I didn't show it to anyone," he said as he handed the oiled paper roll in his hand to Leonor. The information level behind King's Landing was temporarily raised during the war, and no one else could read it except for a few people. When Leonor heard the news that it was King's Landing City, his heart immediately raised it, and quickly took the special oil paper roll and spread it out, and looked carefully. Just as Leonor launched the Battle of Deep Crypt, a rebellion broke out on the side of King's Landing City. Some merchants in King's Landing launched a rebellion. They called themselves Dear Enton 9 people and cooperated with Stannis' fleet inside and outside. They wanted to open the mud gate on the north bank of the Blackwater River in King's Landing and let Stannis' army enter the city, but fortunately old Ballystan discovered the rebellion in time and led his team to quell the rebellious merchants. Leonor couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the content of Ballistan's successful defeat of the rebellion. What he feared most was that Stannis would be beheaded with black magic. As for playing cards like this now, there was no need to be afraid, but he was really anxious. It is difficult to predict whether Stannis will still care about Ballistan's reputation. Black magic. Leonor had a headache when he thought of the unreasonable external move. He had previously picked up a spell to make Valilia Agong from Tobumot's mouth, and then asked the red-robed monk Saurus indirectly for some magical spells. The key point, but the magic about this world is still confused and there is no such thing as it is. How great would it be if I had drawn the Amitabha Sutra of the past or the dark record of Xian Tian? Leonor couldn't help but sigh again that the Tao Sutra he drew from that bad system is just the basic knowledge of Taoism practice in the Yangshen world, and does not contain profound Taoism. If there are Amitabha Sutra and Xian Tian, the supreme scriptures such as dark records, so how could he be afraid of the shadow killer? Just turn the god into Yasha King Cha to death the other party. Give me paper and pen, I want to reply to Lord Balistan. Leonor sighed, but the facts still need to be done. With the paper and pens and papers obtained by Arad, Leonor wrote a letter to old Balistan, first thanking him for his protection of King's Landing, and then repenting to him that he would do anything to the west for victory. Old Balistan is a man who values knight morality and knight honors very much. Even if he doesn't like Robert, he still shows loyalty to Robert, just because he overcomes the way of knights. Therefore, Leonor believes that he is a knight in the west. The amnesty order may make him feel sad. After all, the amnesty order forced the Western knights to kill the master in disguise and destroy the inherent morality of the knights, even if the knights themselves have no morality. In short, it was all a few pleasing words. After Leonor confessed to his pardon order, he comforted the old Balistan and told him that the war in the west was going smoothly and that he had taken down part of the territory in the southeast of the west, although Ed was in the east. There may be some small situation, but I will definitely win the final victory. I hope he can help him stabilize Junlin City before this. After writing the letter, Leonor personally asked someone to pretend to be a crow. He watched the black-colored crow flying to the east, and his heart fell into deep thought again. It was not until Brienne behind him called him to him. What's wrong? Leonor glanced at the female knight who was muffled. Your Majesty, those sand snakes. Brienne put her helmet under her armpits, her freckled face, and she wanted to speak, but she still had an objection to Leonor's sand snake. Brienne, the sand snake is the sand snake, you are you. Although they are dangerous, aren't you still by my side? Leonor could only coax the female knight, don't worry. I will definitely defend your safety to the death. Brienne heard Leonor's words and immediately became energetic. She raised her chest and said that she would definitely protect the king. Then please. Leonor laughed and was easy to coax, but as he thought about it, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He didn't want to coax people. Chapter 66. While staying in deep cry, Leonor ordered Landeo Tally to reorganize the existing coalition forces, count all the power that can be used, and urged them to defeat the Western Frontier nobles who fought with the Western Frontier knights. After more than a month of battle, more than 40 Western nobles and territories, including the Brax family in Kedok City and the Shaliat family in Silver Mountain City, were all destroyed. After completing a large area of occupation, Leonor directly rewarded the merits in the main castle of Shenjiu City. Abal Karangzi, in my name, for your contribution to destroying the traitor of Silver Mountain City, Hel Chalat, I give you the name of the Earl of Silver Mountain City. From now on, the land and taxes of Silver Mountain City will be returned. You all. Leonor held a mace and granted the title land to a middle-aged knight with a strong face. Abal Karanchi is a hired knight who serves Linz Leiden, who redeems his guilt by killing Linz Leiden's second son and kills him in the battle to attack Silver Mountain City. Hel Chalat, the Earl of Yinshan City, was therefore named the new Earl of Yinshan City and the territory of Yinshan City. He Feng, who was personally received by the king, not to mention Abal himself, who was so excited that he kissed Leonor's instep. Even the many nobles and knights watching were breathing rapidly and their eyes were slightly red because they were sealed by Leonor's. It's Yinshan City. Unlike the isolated island that was enfeft the last time, the Yinshan City, which was enfeft by Leonor this time, is a famous Fukin in the west, and is rich in silver mines like Baigong in the north. After Leonor enthroned Abar, he continued to walk down and successively granted the corresponding noble titles and territories to more than 40 knights who killed the nobles in the west. When the feudal was completed, the nobles of the Storm and River Bay who were watching the ceremony could no longer bear it. A reckless knight jumped out and knocked on the ground with one knee. My king, I am Joel Andrew, the knight of the Storm Land. Please give me glory to me as the pioneer of attacking the port of Lannister. Yinshan is a famous rich city in the west, but it is not the richest city in the west. The richest cities in the west are Lannister Port, Kian Fort, and Goldeo City. Those places are either rich in gold or port commercial cities. When all the nobles and knights couldn't help trembling when they thought of the land where gold flowed out like water, the endless stream of goods, and the king's majesty who didn't care about his origins. As soon as Jor Onla finished speaking, Leonor had not replied yet, but saw another knight in the river beside the clover emblem jumping out of the crowd, kneeling on one knee and asking for his order. I am Aldo, the sword of golden oaks. The 60 spears of my family and I are willing to serve you, my majesty the king. I'm from Tongmen City. In front of wealth and honor, everyone felt that they had a chance. The voices of asking for the vanguard were heard in the main fort of Shenjiu city. The soldiers who volunteered to ask for orders soon exceeded 2,000. In the hall, Leonor held a red mace and quietly watched more and more soldiers kneeling in front of him. Oberon, who had changed into a yellow robe, stood behind him, leaned forward slightly, and mumbled at him. One sentence. If the devil of the 7-level hell lives in the world, it must be you. Leonor heard Oberon's complaints and glanced at him quietly. When the sound slowly sparse, he raised the red mace in his hand above his head. Xi shouted, and as his movement slowly calmed down, when Leonor put down the nail in his hand, the entire palace had already fallen into a needle, and he also spoke at this time. Since you are so enthusiastic, I hereby declare that you are all my pioneers. My declaration remains valid, and there are 2 nobles guarding the port of Lannister, Tyrion Lannister and James Lannister. I hereby announce that whoever kills Tyrion, Tywin's young son, and a genius with outstanding wisdom can be awarded the title of Count of Lannister Port and the territory, and kills James can be awarded the town of Oxford Baron and territory. Wow, the whole hall was in an uproar again, and everyone was talking, because Leonor placed Tyrion's reward level above James. James is the strongest among the younger generation of the Lannister family and Tywin's favorite son. If he does not become the royal guard, he will definitely be the only heir to K Rock Fort in the future. Whether it is revenge on Tywin from a personal emotional aspect or considering the strategy of killing the Western leader, James should be placed above his dwarf brother. But what no one expected was that Leonor actually put the little dwarf demon of the Lannister family first, and he paid far more attention than James Lannister. I can compare with gold and stone. Warriors, fate lies with the 7 gods, but the sword is in your hands. Those who seek to survive will die, and those who bravely die will be able to live forever. Take a fight. The 7 gods are with you. Liano had 7 consecutive points with one hand. For the 7 gods. Send Lannister to death. For the king. Various shouts almost broke through the castle of Deep Cave City. With Leonor's warmer swing, the soldiers who were willing to be pioneers in the hall retreated like a tide. They returned to their respective stations, prepared weapons and luggage, and led them to the ground. He got on the war horses, and began to fight along the Golden Avenue towards Lannister Port. On the earth wall of Deep Crying City, Leonor and Oberon stood side by side, and the two watched the crowds on the Golden Avenue outside the city together. A group of fools who died. Oberon looked at the soldiers on the road, feeling a little depressed for no reason. Lannister Port is the richest area in the western region. The Lannister family must have set up heavy troops there. These fools have no unified command and are not as large as others in terms of numbers. In the end, they will definitely be wiped out one by one. Instead of letting them restless in the team with all kinds of dreams, it's better to let them have some fun for Lannister. Leonor disagreed. If these guys stayed in the main force, they would definitely be unstable. It's better to send them first. He would not be able to go out to harass the Lannister family, and he would not be able to lose money if he really wanted to kill the little demon and James. Not thinking about him anymore, Oberon shook his head vigorously, threw his depressed mood out of his mind, and then asked the guy next to him. How is the east now? The troops in the north should have all arrived in Hegion. Why haven't they taken down Golden Tooth City yet? I don't know, the Starks failed to reach the city of Running on time. The North Army driven by Robb Stark was brave in combat. The Borden family of the Fortress of Terror was ordered to bypass Gold Fang. His army robbed everywhere in the west. The results of the battle were quite good, but the Eastern Front could not be advanced. Many people died for the Castark family, Mormon family, and Amber family. Leonor calmly said to Oberon on the Eastern Front condition. You're not going to help them. Oberon felt something was wrong. The people in the north will not accept it. Leonor directly rejected it. Robb Stark was arrogant and his parents' life and death made him complain about him. He was restrained if he did not directly establish himself as king. Chapter 67. After the rectification of Shenjiu City, Leonor can now dispatch a total of 60,000 troops, including more than 8,600 knights, 9,300 horse-riding attendants, and more than 30,000 infantrymen. 2,000 knights and their servants formed a vanguard army to set out first. Leonor divided the remaining troops into two parts. He and Loras personally led 3,000 knights and 1,000 infantrymen in the headquarters, with a total of 4,000 troops along the Golden Avenue. Set out to Lannister Port, as for Blue Road Tallies, leading 5,000 knights to attack Sassfield City from Cock Valley City. After breaking through there, they head from the north to Lannister Port to meet Leonor, or it was to attack Leonor when he was fighting with the garrison in the port of Lannister, and the remaining infantry made every effort to ensure the army's logistics. Leonor did not decide to command the vanguard army, but sent a probe to the vanguard army. The result of the vanguard army fighting various western armies was successively teleported to his hands by these probes. Before approaching Lannister Port, the pioneer army was fiercely resisted by the people in the west. Every castle and manor in the west were resisting outsiders, and their troops were extremely powerful, distributed from Deep Crypto City to Lannister. In every fortress and manor between the port, the vanguard army, which was full of fighting spirit, could not even attack Lannister Port. On the yellowed animal skin map, located between Lannister Port and Deep Crystal City on the west coast, there are blocks after block, representing the resistance of the people in the western region. It's obvious that Lannister is planning to block it layer by layer. Leonor sat upright in front of the map, pressing his hand at Oberon and Loras in front of him. Then let's fight one by one. Let me charge. Loras maintained his strong fighting spirit. Okay, you can't count on him. Leonor looked at the brave Loras, knowing that he could not count on strategy, so he could only look at Oberon, who was holding his hands and crossing his legs. It is obvious that the enemy is planning to consume our strength and disperse our army's strength. When the right time strikes our logistics route, we will be defeated by then. Oberon gave his own opinion. Then do you have a good way? Leonor nodded slightly. He and Oberon had the same view. This strategy was obviously the hand of the little demon. If it was James Lannister, he would probably be if you lead someone to a reckless wave, you will win if you win, and if you lose, your whole family will die. It is better to be such an opponent. I think I can only rely on Lord Landeo now. The enemy will definitely be very careful about us on the Golden Avenue, but if he is in the north, he will definitely be negligent. Oberon gave his opinion that it is the best the method is, once Lord Landeo launches an attack from the north to Lannister Port, even if the enemy is prepared, the troops will definitely be dispersed and will create opportunities for us. Daikon, convey a copy of the situation we are facing now to your father. You don't have to ask him what to do, just tell him the situation. Leonor turned his head and asked Daikon Tally. Yes. Daikon Tally bent over and responded to the order, then quickly left to convey the information as he said. Maybe we can attack head-on and create opportunities for Lord Landeo. Loras couldn't help but come up with an idea. He didn't want to just sit there. No, we are the front. Once we lose, the logistics will not be guaranteed. Then it will be useless for Lord Landeo to fight. Oberon turned his head and looked at the young and energetic Loras, and slowly took action. He tells it. Then we will do nothing now. Loras couldn't help but say. You have to be patient, Loras, this is a war and an unprecedented hunt. Our prey is one of the oldest families on this land. Leonor appeased Loras. Yes. Loras dared to be presumptuous to Oberon, but he had to soften his attitude towards Leonor, but he was still unhappy in his heart. Your Majesty, can you allow me to retreat first? Go. Please invite Count Abal to me. Leonor felt that it was useless to stay Loras, so he let him come and go. As he watched Loras leave the tent, Oberon rubbed his hands and curled his lips. It's obvious that he's not as good as his brother, whether it's Velas or Garland. He doesn't need to compete with his brother. Leonor smiled. The Terrier family had already decided the order. Varys broke his leg in the competition with Oberon, and Garland had been designated as the official heir. Loras is just an optional person, he is still sad about losing Renly. While he was talking, the tent was lifted up, and Earl of Silver Mountain City, Abal Karangzi, who was wearing a lion's skin as a cloak, walked into the tent and knelt down to Leonor on one knee. Abar, send your men into the western frontier, and you don't need to attack. You go to the knights and lobby them. My pardon and promise are still valid. If you can't lobby, then find out the distribution of the troops in the western frontier for me. Leonor asked Abar Karangzi, because the vanguard army was blocked and the fierce resistance in the western frontier was strong, what he needed to do most now was to first understand the reality of the opponent. The surrendered western frontier knights were the best horse-sided 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 horse-s candidate. Yes, my majesty. The newly promoted Earl of Yinshan City followed Leon's promise. The provocateur, who was appointed by the Western Knights, entered the enemy territory from all walks, lobbying the low-level knights from all walks of life, and exploring the enemy situation in various places, and finally passing it back to Leono's hands. Through the information sent by the Western explorers, Leono had a rough understanding of the situation in the western border, but then he had another doubt. The western frontier is indeed in a situation of national resistance. It is fine if those western nobles have been given a reward order. After all, the knights have no nobles' heads as a letter of fame and can only resist, but why do civilians resist? The western frontier where the whole nation resisted was extremely powerful. Although the quality of the troops was not high, the number of people reached hundreds of thousands. Not only civilians, but also the probing horses in the vanguard army also reported that there were unknown numbers of savages attacking them. The savages are a very special group of Westeros. They are humans who do not obey the rule of the nobles and flee into the deep mountains and wilderness. They wander outside civilization all day long and live only on the land north of the Red Char River, especially outside the Great Wall in the north. There are the most icy and snowy areas in the Bright Moon Mountains in the Eastern Valley, so why are there now also the western border? The little devil was obviously not captured by Catelyn, so he had not been taken to the east. How could there be savages appear in the West Army? Before Leonor could figure out these problems, he ushered in a big event. The Central Army where he was located encountered an attack. It seemed that some part of the Western Army in Lannister Port took the initiative to attack. Chapter 68. The wind was howling in the night, and the sound of killing suddenly came from outside the tent. When Leonor heard the rushing sound, he was shocked. He touched the nail and stood up with no choice. He saw Brienne in light armor and iron armor. Obiah, holding a spear, came in from outside the tent, guarded by Obiah's sisters Namelia and Tarani in the sight of the wind. "Your Majesty, we are attacked." Brienne looked anxious. "Obiah, goes and see what the situation is. Don't participate in the battle. If you find out the situation, come back and report it to me." Leono stood up and ordered. "Yes." Brienne turned around and went out of the tent without saying a word. "Name and Tarani, come in and put on armor for me. Are there any other guards outside?" Leono said, and he raised his voice so loudly. He found that there were a lot of noisy footsteps outside the tent, which was obvious. "The night attack scared me." When many people arrived, he began to hear people shouting, "Lannister is here." "Yes." The person who replied to Leono was Obiah. The Sand Snake was frightened by Leono's sudden increase in volume, and his expression showed a little bit of surprise and disbelief, because Leono has always been kind and kind. "Treat them with the face." Outside the tent, the tall and slender Namelia and the white-skinned Tarani entered the tent, and their faces were at a loss. "What are you still waiting for?" Leonor opened his arms and cursed. Then the two Sand Snakes realized and took out their armor and hung them for him. "Your Majesty!" Dickon's voice came from outside the door. "Dickon, go and run around the camp and see what's going on in the camp, so that all the soldiers can stand on my post. Everyone who dares to shout and run will be killed on the spot." Liano lets the two Sand Snakes put on armor for him and orders to Dickon outside the tent. "Yes." The young Tally took his order to leave without entering the door. "You go too, ride on your horse. When you see the kind of person in the camp who dares to yell and run around, and doesn't listen, you'll stab me to death with a spear." Leonor shouted and said that he was stunned by the silence next to him. "Obiah." "Yes." The Sand Snake, who received the order, finally stopped staying still and turned around and left the tent. When the two Sand Snakes helped him put on the armor, Leonor shook his body, turned his head to look at Namelia and Tarani, and saw the two beautiful Sand Snakes looking at him with their eyes. "I was very stunned and a little angry. What are you looking at? Have you never seen me?" When facing him, Tarani, who was younger, fair-skinned and had blue eyes, turned her eyes away, and her skin was also white but grey eyes. Namelia, who had a braid, rolled her eyes. "Ha ha ha!" Leonor couldn't help laughing when he saw the cute appearance of the two Sand Snakes. He turned around and took a bag and tied it on his face. He took big steps to get out of the tent. As a result, as soon as he lifted the curtain, he almost got hit by a figure. "What are you doing?" Leono started to slap the person in the face, making the other party confused. "Your Majesty, our flanks have been attacked." Arad responded with his face covering. "I was attacked and I was attacked. Go and call the guards, bring my horse over, and my flag." Leono ordered. "Yes." Arad left with his face covering his face. "Where are your weapons?" Leonor turned his head and looked at Namelia and Tyranny behind him. Namelia listened to Leonor's words and took out a long whip from behind her waist, while Tyranny took out a dagger. This weapon doesn't work on the battlefield. Leonor threw his mace to Namelia. When Arad brought the war horse, he took a triangular sword from the saddle and threw it to Tyranny. As for himself, he turned over and took a horse, took a bow and took an arrow. Rise the flag up and go. Leonor sat on the horse, holding a bow in one hand and taking an arrow in the other, knocking his heel on the horse's belly, and walking twice, while Arad covered his face and held the flag with his eyes and raised it with his eyes. Behind him, a group of guards were quickly gathered, and their sight was not high at night, but the gathering crowd made the soldiers safe, especially when they saw Leonor wearing armor and bows, riding on horseback, and the crowned stag behind him. The flag has found its backbone. Soon, Dickon and Obiah, who were sent out to patrol, rushed back on horseback, and the two explained the situation of the entire camp to Leonor. The area guarded by Loras on the left side of the camp was attacked with savages and fully armored knights. They attacked with a brown, black and white wild boar flag and dispersed many knights in the riverside land. It's the Kretsch family in the Yangji Hall. Have you encountered attacks in other camps? Leonor heard the black and white wild boar flag and knew who the enemy was attacked, the ruling family in the Yangji Hall on the Binhai Avenue. No, Count Abal is pacifying people. Obai responded to Leonor. Very good, you are here, Dickon, come and lead them and comfort everyone, don't be afraid or impulsive. Leonor asked Dickon to take charge of the camp for him. Yes. Dickon nodded quickly. Brani, Obiah, Arad, Namelia, Tyranny and 50 guards will come, and everyone will ride on horseback and go to the south barracks with me. When the corresponding people gathered in order, Leonor took the king's flag representing his identity and headed towards the Zoeying camp, which had the loudest rushing sound, where there was a fire. Zoeying was attacked by the enemy at night, and it was a mess. In the light of burning tents and bonfires, unknown numbers of enemies were rushing to death. Most of the knights in the river bend were chased and panicked, and only a few brave people were resisting. I am Leonor Baratheon, everyone gathered here. Seeing the chaos on the scene, Leonor was a little angry and shot a horse to death. He took the bow and arrow and shot a horse to death. And at the same time, let the chaotic crowd gather. On the battlefield, the knights of the river bend heard the sound and subconsciously looked at it. When they saw the tall horse, Leonor, and the crowned stag flag behind him, they immediately found the backbone and the one who should resist. Resist, move closer. The knights in the camp saw Leonor, and the enemies attacked at night also saw him. 30 or 40 knights began to get rid of the enemies and gathered together, and then rushed towards him. Obiah, take 10 people to rush over and destroy them. Leonor saw the crowd gathering with the enemy, and pointed a big red and white bow in his hand, letting his biggest sand snake lead people to rush over. Yes. Obiah responded high, then knocked the warhorse under her crotch, and led 10 cavalrymen to rush over as Leonor's bow tip. In just one round, the crowd on the opposite side was destroyed. At the moment when Obiah defeated the small groups of enemies, more enemy teams gathered, and a black and white wild boar flag with brown bottom floated out of the darkness, attracting more full-armored knights to gather together, with a fierce look. Drive the knights in the river bay in the camp and come to Leonor's royal flag. Chapter 69. In the dark night, the black and white wild boar flag on the brown bottom faces the crowned stag flag on the yellow bottom faces across the air. Knights are constantly gathering under the two flags, preparing for the final battle. Leonor sat under the banner, looking at the bustling people in the distance. His soul was sophisticated that he could penetrate the darkness. However, there were many people on the other side, and he could not recognize which leader was, so he could only draw out a three-edged one. The arrow hit the bowstring and shouted to the distance. Sir Kret. He remembered that the noble surname of the chicken hall was Klhi. He forgot what the current head of the family name was, but it was definitely true that he called Sir Klhi. As long as anyone responded, he would give the other party an arrow and cut off the other party's head. And then rushed over and rushed forward. Leonor had a good plan, but unfortunately he shouted Sir Klach and no one responded to him. Instead, the troops there gathered and were about to start charging. Leonor saw the crowds gathering on the other side, and glanced at his side again. Obiah, who had been sent out to charge, has now brought people back. He has about 50 riders, and there are many rivers and bays. The knights gathered, but they were all in hiking, some of them didn't even have weapons, let alone armor. It is impossible to win if you fight like this, you must find a way. Leonor looked at the opposite side again, and saw the crowd surging. He could see through the darkness, but he didn't recognize which one was the head of Kretsch's family. However, he glanced at him and saw the black and white wild pig with brown bottom in the crowd opposite. The flag couldn't help but move, and immediately opened the full moon and aimed at the guy who was playing the flag. Whoosh! The heavy arrow broke out from the string. A muffled groan came from the dark night. The fully armored knight who was hitting the flag fell down from his chest, and the black and white wild boar flag he was trapped in his hand fell down darkly. The knights of the Yangji Hall who had gathered their momentum and were about to launch a charge felt a concealed look on their heads and a thing floated down. When they looked closely, they suddenly stopped. Roar over and kill them all. Leono shot the flag bearer to death, and raised his big red and white bow forward. Xi Lulu neighed, and the war horse under his crotch had already rushed out. Run! Obai raised his spear, Brienne waved his sword, and the two of them arrived first, protecting Leonor, and 50 guards including Namelia and Terran were behind him, and the river bay was the knights realized it later, but were soon infected. Although they did not have war horses, those with weapons took weapons, and those without weapons simply copied a stone. The whole army charged forward. If they did not charge at this time, the enemy would rush up and all would die. The knights in the chicken hall lost the guidance of the flag, and the momentum of the charge was blocked. In the blink of an eye, they were scattered by the counter-charge of the troops led by Leonor, and they were in chaos in the darkness. Some knights wanted to pick up the flag again. I still want to resist. Leono was protected by Obaya and Brienne. Seeing someone trying to raise the flag again, he shot through his neck without saying a word. Go and kill him! Leono shouted to the left and right. Obai rushed over without hesitation, and picked up the knight with a spear. Brienne was still protecting Leono. Beside him, he raised his great sword, Hanbing, and split a close knight, including the man and the sword, and snatched a spear from him. Give it to me. Leonor put the big bow on his body, asked the spear through Brienne's hand, and grabbed it under his armpit and rushed to Obaya. Obaya tried hard to pick the knight on the spear, stepped on the black and white wild boar flag again under the horse's hooves, waved the spear in his hand, and intimidated the knights of the chicken hall who wanted to approach, until Leonor rode his horse and held the spear. Blast over with Brienne. The knights in the chicken hall kept accumulating their offensives, but were disbanded. At this moment, there was no way out. They left in groups of horses without any nostalgia. Don't chase. Leonor saw the knights in the chicken hall retreat and shouted to the left and right, Brienne, go find Loras and let him see me. Yes. Brienne held the big sword Hanbing, nodded when she heard this, and went to find someone. Stand my king flag here. Leonor pointed his spear and asked Arad to stand firmly on the king flag he was carrying, while he himself stood under the flag, running back and forth, instructing the guards to gather again. Crowd, treating the injured knight. After a while, Brienne, who was riding a horse, returned, and Lolas, who was not well clad, also rode a horse to follow her, with many blood stains on her body. Injured. Leonor hit the horse and asked Loras. No. Lolas looked very ashamed, the blood on his body was not his. Don't worry, people always suffer losses. This time the person who attacked us was Kretsch of the chicken hall. If you look back, you will have the chance to challenge and kill him. Leonor encouraged. Yet. Lolas nodded fiercely. After comforting Loras, Leonor continued to direct the cleanup of the mess. When the sun rose from the horizon, 60% or 70% of Leonor's army camp were destroyed, and many knights were killed. In addition to the knights in the chicken hall, there were also many armored men wearing animal leather hoods. Savage. Most of the savages were killed on the spot, and a small number were captured, giving Leono a chance to interrogate. Where are you savages? The black and powerful Aobai lowered her head in enduring the discomfort, and asked the guy who was full of hair and blood, who looked like a wild beast than a human. The Moon Mountains, the Moon Tribe. The savage captive answered in a slightly strange common language. Why join the Western Army? Leonor found a pony and sat there with his knees in his hands. Namelia, Terani, Brienne, and Arad behind him held his harps and arrows and bows for him. And maces and other equipment. Half-Man promised us that as long as we helped them, they would help us get the land back. The savage captive had his yellow teeth and his expression was a little angry. Half a man. Obaya frowned, a little puzzled who this is. Tyrion Lannister, is half-man a dwarf? Leonor mentioned a name, and saw that the savage was puzzled, so he described it to him. Yes, he is only half the height of us. The savage nodded, so he called Half-Man. If I let you go, will you still help them? Leonor waved his hand, asked Obiah to retreat, and directly interrogated the savage himself. No, those people didn't keep their promises and agreed to fight together, but ran away by themselves. Kawawahaha hated them. The savage expression was ferocious, and he angrily scolded the knights of the Western Rice Hall regardless of their comrade's life or death. Kawa, your name? Leonor was amused by the savage's name. Kawawa is Kawawawa. The wild man was so angry. Then do you want to fight with us? Leonor asked again with a smile. I won't fight anymore, Kawawa is going home. The savage Kawawawa was discouraged. They could not beat these guys in iron clothes, even if they were wearing iron clothes. All savages, as long as they are willing to swear to no longer be with Lannister and no longer fight with us, they will be let go. Leonor took action against the savages. Chapter 70. By dawn, the detailed casualties were counted, and the coalition forces directly lost more than 400 knights, and more of the knights were missing. The original 5,000 troops were only 2,800 knights and 1,000 infantrymen. As for in the chicken hall, Leonor asked people to search the battlefield and only picked up about 80 bodies. The casualties of the night attack were too great. If the Westerners fought like this a few more times, I'm afraid the team would not be able to take over. Leonor dispatched 2,000 knights from Deep Crypt to supplement, then made adjustments to the strategic plan, accelerated the advancement to Lannister Port, vigorously cleared the small fortress and manor on the way, and waited for the Blue Road to take place on the flank. While vigorously clearing out the small fortresses and manors along the way, the knights also captured a considerable number of civilians from the west. The civilians from the west also joined the resistance and were very determined. However, most of their battles were confused and they were extremely afraid of the knights. After the lord and the knights were defeated, they all chose to escape or surrender. Leonor was very cruel to the nobles and knights, but was very lenient to the civilians. He asked about the reasons for joining the war, except for a very few who were determined to defend their homeland. Most of them answered. All. I don't know. It was the bishop who said he wanted this. The priest let us do this. The 7 gods ask us to do this. They are still confused, but it can be roughly inferred that their joining the war was a boost to the fire. Westeros, the 7 gods of Andals are an existence that cannot be ignored. They are the mainstream culture of society and the source of the knight system. The civilians are afraid of the noble knights on the surface and cursed in their hearts, but they are from the inside out to the outside of the gods. Obedience. If it is the help of the 7 gods priests, then the mobilization ability of the western region is understandable. Leonor found out the source of the western mobilization ability ascendants, and immediately sent a crow to King's Landing City, asking Vincent to try to solve the problem from the Archbishop. The crow flew away and flew back, bringing the church reply conveyed by Vincent. The church expressed its willingness to solve the problem, but also put forward corresponding conditions. First, it hopes that Leonor can repay the 1.6 million golden dragons owed to the church during Robert's period as soon as possible, and second, it hopes that the church can be in front of the future king's imperial decree. The meeting has a place. If the latter can be agreed, the church can exempt part of the debts from the former. If it is willing to appoint a certain archbishop as the hand of the king, the church is willing to exempt all debts. Those guys in the church are not good at vegetarianism and worshipping God, but they are good at doing business. They dare to take advantage of the situation to fight my disaster. Leonor grinned his teeth in his heart when facing the church's proposal, but he suppressed his anger and wrote a letter to Vincent, asking him to talk to the church on his behalf, return part of the debt, and then urge him to the church will solve this problem first. As long as the war in the Western Front ended successfully, he would let the guys in the church spit out whatever they ate. It took about a week to travel, write letters and talk instructions. After receiving 300,000 gold dragon funds, the church sent chaotic crows, requiring all priests in the western region to no longer cooperate with the princes in the western region to incite civilians to join the war. Violators will be dismissed from their churches. While ordering the priests are prohibited from participating in the war, the church also sent some low-level priests and nuns to the front line to help appease civilians and treat the wounded. With the help of the church, Leonor's army no longer suffered strong resistance from the military and civilians in the west. In addition, he released Kawawa and the savages who were waiting for him to release the news. The savage tribes in the Minjiao Mountains no longer believed in the West and began to gather their tribes and flee. Many Western knights began to watch the battle and directly escaped from the main force of the Western army. The main focus of the situation is that when a wall falls down, everyone pushes it, and when thousands of people beat it. Without the desperate resistance of the civilians and the harassment of the savages, Leono's army was unstoppable and directly attacked the city of Lannister Port. He originally planned to fight the Western Frontier Army at Lannister Port, destroying most of the Western Frontier forces here and reducing the difficulty of siege in Kian City, but when his army arrived here, the city fires were everywhere and black smoke was seen. Like a cloud. The Lannister family was very determined and withdrew all their troops and set fire to the city. Even if it was burned to white ground, it would not be left to Leono. These bastards! Leono looked at the rising flames in the city and couldn't help but curse. Those lions were really cruel. The Lannister port was crying and screaming, and many people were anxious to try out the fire. Leonor was hesitant and entangled in his heart when he saw this situation. His most important task now should be to command the army to the north and pursue the remnants of Lannister's army. If he was lucky enough, he could even bid the remaining troops into Kian City, saving the most difficult siege battle, but in this case, Lannister Port would have to be burned to white land and many people would be displaced. If he stayed, he might be able to save some of the port of Lannister, but the people here may not necessarily thank him, and he will definitely add a bunch of burdens afterwards. Because surviving residents have to eat and drink, it will definitely increase their logistics burden. This may also be the reason why the Lannister family wants to set fire to the city. Fuck. Leonor swears. Why can't Lannister's people be stupid? Can't they let themselves kill them obediently? What are you thinking? Oberon rode to Leonor and asked him why he hadn't given orders to go north, so that he could catch up with some remaining soldiers. Loras Inabal led 2,000 knights to pursue the north, and the infantry stayed behind, and went to the city to put out the fire, and sent some horse-riding servants back to the city of Shenzhui to transport grain, and then sent crows to the King's Landing, High Court and Fengzi Fort, let them transport grain from sea to the port of Lannister. Leonor gave a series of orders to Arad beside him. Yes. Arad, who was born in a flea nest, couldn't help but lit up when he heard Leonor's words. He quickly rode his horse to pass the order, and as for Dickon, he served with a flag. Your Highness, please come to the city with me to command the fire. Leonor asked Oberon. It's no point in saving this city now. Oberon advised Leonor. It is not necessary to chase now. The defense of Kian City is difficult to break in a short time. We need this place as a logistics transfer place. Leono casually found a reason for himself that looks very decent. Oberon was about to refute, but after hearing Leonor say it, he couldn't help but turn his head around. It seemed like this was the case. We will still rule the western border after the war. Our practices in the past are very unfriendly to them. If we save here, we can tell the civilians in the western border that we are not here to destroy them. Leono found another reason. Then what are we waiting for? Oberon was convinced, there was nothing wrong with it, so just do it. Let your Sand Snake group be on guard. My infantry is responsible for putting out the fire. Now it is the southeast wind. Demolition of the houses in the southeast direction and stop the fire from spreading. Leono looked at the situation in the city. Start issuing a series of fire-fighting orders. Chapter 71. After spending a whole day and a night, Leono organized his infantry to slash the walls and tear down the houses, creating a fire barrier in the downwind of the city, successfully preventing the spread of the fire, saving nearly half of the city, and as for the other half, the city is still burning in the fire. The flames burned for 3 days but they didn't burn out, but fortunately, the residents of Port Lannister were quite friendly to Leono and others and did not do anything excessive. Leono also distributed some of the food to the homeless. The homeless residents also gave each of the infantrymen and the Sand Snake regiments who participated in the firefighting to comfort them. On the other hand, the knights he sent out failed to catch up with Lannister. They were sobbed at the foot of Kian City, but good news came from the Blue Road, and he had successfully captured Safisl Deshan, and also met with Luce Bolton, Count of the North Terror Fort raided in the Western Territory. On the West Eros, where architectural wonders are everywhere, Kian City is a building that is as famous as the Wind Smoke Castle that can fight against the storm, the Great Wall that blocks the White Walkers in the north, and the legendary Old Town Tower. This castle is different from Fengzi Castle and Red Castle. It is built directly in a cave in a huge rock on a mountain. The mountain is the city wall and the mine is the residence. On a high slope outside Kian City, Leonor rode his horse in parallel with Oberon, followed by Obaya, Brienne, and others. Everyone looked at the giant creature in the distance from a high place. Leonor couldn't help sighing when he saw the castle lying on the beach like a giant. We have to fight. If you don't even have this challenge, why do you think the Lannister family should gain a foothold in this land? Oberon sneered. How did Lannister take him from the Kestley family? Leonor took a deep breath, intending to find some experience from history. Kai Rock City is not from the Lannister family. It originally belonged to a family called Kestley. The ancestor of the Lannister family, the clever Lane, took him away from the Kestley family, and the Lannister family was founded. There are several legends, and most of them think that Lane planted his seeds in the belly of the Kestley woman and conquered this place by giving birth. Do you want to try it too? Oberon finally found one opportunity. He always wanted to make Leonor's dirty jokes, and this guy seemed to be not interested in such things. I have no feelings for the women of the Lannister family. Leonor curled his lips directly. You just need not be indifferent to women. Oberon said, looking at Namelia and Tyranny behind him. Leonor rolled his eyes to the red venomous snake who always liked to make sex jokes, continued to look at the fortress in the distance, and then asked. What about Aegon? How did Targaryen conquer here, by the dragon? No, it was the Lannister family who was seeking death by themselves. At that time, King Llewellyn sent an army to form a coalition with Meng and I of the Huandi Gardner family, and started a war with Aegon I in the north of Huandi. Aegon I rode his 3 heads. The dragon enters the battlefield. The main force was destroyed by Dragon Flame, and the Lannister family surrendered. When Leonor heard that the 3-headed dragons entered the battlefield, he knew what the result was, but he thought of another thing again, and the dragon mother seemed to have 3-headed dragons. Speaking of which, he is now conquering the western frontier, saying I can only live one of the Lannisters and I all day long, but in fact he and the dragon mom, no, he and Daenerys Targaryen, it seems that only one person can live. In the Westeros continent, most families can bow their knees to Daenerys and ask for surrender, but the Baratheon family does not. Daenerys will never accept the rebellious Baratheon family, so sooner or later he and the other party there will be a battle. Daenerys also has 3 dragons. He is now struggling to deal with a shadow killer. If he encounters those 3 dragons in the future, wouldn't he take jujube pills? What are you thinking? Oberon couldn't help but be curious when he saw Leonor suddenly disappearing his voice. What was going on in his mind? No, nothing. Leonor came back to his senses and rejected it. Just as he was about to reply, he heard a sound of horse hooves. As the sound was heard, a bunch of smoke rolled over under the hillside, with 2 flags in the smoke, one of which was the Tally family's Steady Hunter flag, and the other was pink, with a red human body painted on it. Shoulders, the arms, legs and chest are contrasting with each other's thickness, and the strokes are simple, but the muscle lines are lifelike, as if they are skinned. It's the people from the North Terror Fort. Oberon turned his horse. You can't go over and see them. They are here. Leonor did not move, and withdrew his gaze. He did not like the people of the Horror Fort. While he was talking, the smoke and dust had already rolled to the top of the slope. The knights tied the horses' reins. The last Landeo Tally was dressed in military uniform. Seeing Leonor standing on the top of the slope, he jumped off the horse and stroked his chest with his hands. When he greeted him, he shouted, Your Majesty. Next to Blue Road, a tall man with long black hair, pale eyes and a pale and smooth face jumped off the horse, followed Blue Road Tally to Leonor on the horse, saying Your Majesty. His soft words were completely different from the vulgar and barbaric that was used to in the north, which made Oberon and others stare at each other. Les Bolton of the Horror Fort, you'll have a chance to go this trip. Leonor pulled the horse around, and the thin and pale Luce Bolton nodded with an arrogant expression. It is our duty to serve the king. Luce Bolton was not angry with Leonor's arrogant expression, but was even more humble. The battle between the princes of the Northern Territory is not going well, but you are an exception. Leonor sat on his horse, pinched his waist with his right hand, looked down at the Count of the Horror Fort from a high place, observing his expression. Because this is fighting for the king. Luce Bolton did not show any abnormal expression, and expressed that as a servant, it was natural that he fought hard for the king. Very good, I think you are very good, much better than the other princes in the north. Leonor saw Luce Bolton's expression, made a satisfied expression and jumped off the horse. This is my honor. Luce Bolton also laughed this time. Come on, my Lord Borden, come and see, this Qian city, do you have a good way to capture him? Leonor jumped off his horse, waved his hand to recruit old Borden to his side, he pointed his right hand at Qian city on the distant seashore and asked him about the way to break the city. My king, I have never seen the majesty of this city before. I am afraid that only the Great Wall of Desperateness can be compared with it, and the Great Wall of Desperateness has not been captured yet. Loose Borden's pale eyes reflected the seashore. The giant city responded softly. There's no way. Leonor frowned. If it were me, I would try to use fear to make the city open itself. This is not a good idea, at least I don't think it is. Leonor sighed. This guy is just here to surrender and invite him, and it is useless. What about the lockdown? Loose Bolton tried to please. It's useless. There is a port inside Qian City leading to the outside world. Leonor shook his head. Chapter 72. On the hillside outside Qian City, Leonor led everyone to discuss for a long time, but he did not discuss a suitable way to break the city. The solution that everyone came up with was either to siege the city and force the people in Qian City to surrender at the end of their lives, or to make promises to rebel and cause civil strife in the people inside. No matter which one is not a way to break the city head-on. It is really too outrageous for Qian City to come. Even if the Targaryen family brings dragons over, they may not be able to conquer the city without 50 dragons. It seems that there is no way to break the city by using conventional methods. Seeing that everyone had no choice, Leonor could only sigh. He didn't want to use it. You have any unconventional methods? Oberon could hear what Leonor said. It's a little bit. Leonor nodded, but did not explain in detail, but turned his head and spoke to Landeo. Master Landeo, you come and organize all the troops. Yes. Landeo Tally quickly leaned over and waited for the king's order. Siege the city first. Leonor asked the Blue Road organization to surround Qian City first. Yes. Landeo Tally nodded again, then took the order and left. Qian City is a city built on a mountainous rock, standing on the seashore, backed by the Sunset Sea. There is a deep trench outside the city as a moat, and only a stone bridge can pass through it. In order to resist Leonor's army, the Lannister clan had destroyed the stone bridge, and the broken gravel fell into the deep sea, cutting off the only outward road. The enemy could not enter Qian City, and the people in Qian City could not get out, so they watched helplessly. Teams gathered on the land on the hillside outside the city. Landeo Tally faithfully carried out Leonor's order, organized the army outside Qian City, and surrounded the land roads in Qian City with a continuous stream of water and camp. Leonor asked Landeo to organize a besiege, and he used a crow to return to King's Landing City, asking Dorit to arrange for his improved wildfire and purple thunder gunpowder to transport to the western frontier. His unusual siege method is to use wildfire or gunpowder to explode Qian City. However, in this case, the entire Qian City will inevitably be blown up and destroyed. He didn't really want to hurt the architectural wonder of Qian City, nor did he want to break his crowning scene, but he didn't care much about it now. Soon, the purple thunder gunpowder and improved wildfire he requested were transported to Lannister Port through a ship. His practice of rescuing Lannister Port in time was accidentally accelerated, and the army's logistics was indeed accelerated, because sea transportation was more than land transportation. Be good and strong. In addition to the required purple thunder gunpowder and improved wildfire, the fleet also transported siege equipment, such as scorpion crossbows, catapults, and a large amount of mill tapestries, wine and food. Leonor only thought it was a labor force, and he didn't care too much. He sent the scorpion crossbow and catapult to the front line and handed it to Landeo, so that he could use these to launch a long-range attack on Qian City, but the army should not be allowed to enter the attack. The nearest soldiers must also stand safely. What does your majesty mean? Landeo Tally was confused when he received the order and looked up at his son who came to pass the order. I don't know, I dare not ask. Dickon Tully shook his head. Don't have the intention to guess the monarch. Since His Majesty the King has an order, then we will implement it firmly. Landeo Tally was confused, but thinking that the battle ended here, His Majesty the King was definitely not the kind of thinking. If you are a person who comes out, you must have a complete plan and don't make any guesses. The Earl of Jiaoling faithfully implemented Leonor's request, sent people to erect the scorpion crossbow and catapulted machine, and then attacked the gate and walls of Qian City day and night. The whole of Qian City is a huge mountain-like rock. A watchtower is built on the top of the mountain, and the head of the city is cut out from the hillside. The hollow abdomen is used as a palace. Except for the city gate that connects to the land through the trench, almost the entire city is filled with heavy rocks. This unique structure allows the city to withstand the burning from the dragon flames. However, facing the stone thrown by the machine, a single piece may not be a big deal, but after being too many, it begins to fall into large areas of rock. Then the whole was slaughtered by a big arrow from the scorpion crossbow, and the mountain that acted as the city wall became increasingly concave and thin. The coalition forces kept using catapults and scorpion crossbows outside, and Leono was not idle either. He beat improved wildfire and purple thunder gunpowder into powder, and waited until he left his body at night to get out of his body and remove the gunpowder powder from Lannister. Before transporting it to Kian City within the port, fill it into the hole nailed out by the scorpion crossbow on the city wall, and finally compact it with dry soil. After hundreds of kilograms of purple thunder gunpowder and wildfires were filled in the walls of Kian City, Leono calculated his days, and it had been half a month since he surrounded Kian City. On this day, the preparations were completely completed. Leonor rode a yellow horse and left Lannister Harbor under the escort of Brienne and Obaya and other Sand Snake sisters. He came to the military camp in front of Kian City. He was preparing to inspect the place and then deploy the offensive work after breaking the city, but as soon as he entered the military camp, he was a little unhappy. The knights were very loose in the camp where the flags were waving. Although most of them were armored, the people standing guard were chatting, and more people were gathering in the middle of the camp to watch a girl in green skirt sing. Young warriors! You have been remembered in history. The girl in green skirt stood on a short stool, singing the knights with her slightly gorgeous voice and songs, and the knights listened too. It should be relished, at least it should be relished. Leono looked at the girl in green skirt and saw that she was about 18 or 19 years old, with brown hair and green eyes, very beautiful and charming, and she looked familiar. She had never come into contact with any socialites in the camp, prostitutes, and so on. Dickon, who was with him, asked. Who is this? It's Mr. Riel. Dickon responded carefully. Margarita Riel. Leonor suddenly realized, no wonder he looked familiar, it turned out to be her. Just as Leonor and his guards were riding on horseback, Margaret in the green skirt had already finished singing a song. She used the song to praise the heroism of the knights. After the song was over, she picked up 2 small fists and used abnormality. He whispered in a passionate tone. Warriors, please believe your king, he will not let your expectations down. Lannister is already our possession, and you will be rewarded with the breaking of this city. Margaret not only verbally motivated the knights, but also her entourage took out a bag full of silver coins, which attracted many knights to come forward to rob. This is working on the army for me. Leono saw what Margaret was doing, but he was not happy with the help of his good wife. Instead, he frowned. After thinking for a long time, he did not interfere in the looting in the field and looked at Brienne behind him. Waiting for someone. Walk. He said, pulling out his horse and leaving, taking Brienne and others to go to find Landeo, who was in charge. But before he could urge the horse, he heard a tender cry. Jazz, please wait a moment. Leonor heard the voice and looked away. He saw Margaret in the green skirt in the distance, holding a handful of silver coins, scattering the crowd and walking towards him and others, as if he was coming to give him money. Didn't recognize me? Leonor subconsciously looked up and then remembered that he was preparing to inspect. He did not shoot the king's flag, but when he turned his head and saw Dickon Tally behind him, his heart was like a mirror again. Chapter 73. With the character of Little Rose Margaret, how could she not know the heir of the Tally family, the important vassal of her family? She probably wanted to create an unexpected encounter. Leono's heart was like Ming Jing. When Margaret came close, he also changed into a smiling face. He turned his head and looked at the girl in the green skirt and white flower coming to the front. He did not dismount and sat directly on the horse and bowed to her. Smiling. Beautiful lady, are you okay with me? Ah. Dear Jazz, it's so rude that I haven't asked your name yet. Margaret lowered her head in the face of the handsome man with black hair and blue eyes, and took a step back as if she was panicked. Her steps were as light as a deer, and her posture was like a deer as natural as a lady. She even held the silver coin in her hand that seemed to be handing to Leono and others. If you don't know, I'm so embarrassed. My name is Leono Baratheon. Seeing Margaret's appearance, Leono no longer smiled, but straightened his waist. Sitting on the horse, his voice became cold and handsome. There were many knights present. When they saw Margaret being frightened, they were a little angry and wanted to go forward to argue and even wanted to challenge, but when they heard Leonor's self-reported name, they were all shocked. An uproar sound was made. His Majesty the King, I am Margaret, Margaret Turiel, your future wife. Margaret also had a frightened expression on his face, but he still acted generously, and reported his name and gave him a name. The future wife regards herself as Ace. Sitting on the horse, he was afraid of the numerous knights and a beautiful girl. For a normal man, it should be a moment of accomplishment. Unfortunately, Leonor did not feel as if he had shown up as a success, because he knew this everything was created by Margaret to please herself. Very teasing woman. Leonor made a conclusion about Margaret. He did not like this woman who had almost become his sister-in-law or younger sibling. However, thinking of the support of the Terrier family, he nodded to the girl. I'm glad to know you, Miss Margaret. You'll leave the barracks immediately after you finish your own business. Our wedding will begin after the breakup of Kai Rock City. Yes, Your Majesty. Margaret lowered her head, preventing Leonor from seeing her expression immediately. Okay, let's all disperse. Leonor waved to the knights and let them all disperse. There is no difference between the knights standing together, but at this moment, the difference can be seen. The vulgar people push their companions away, while the slightly polite people leave after giving a polite courtesy. There are still 25 secretly spitting out a mouthful of spitting and thinking that no one is see. Leonor took the performance of many knights in his eyes, disagreed with it, and did not go to see Xia Rose. After everyone left, he went to find Landao directly. When he found Landao, he was under the city of Qian City, without armor, wearing a decent dark green suit, and personally directed 3 stone catapults and 18 scorpion crossbows to output against the city wall, making the opposite mountain constantly drop rocks down. Sir Landao, stop! Leonor directly shouted to Landao. Your Majesty! Landao showed a puzzled look to Leonor. You will have 1 day to rectify the entire army and prepare to launch the final attack. Leonor looked up at the sky. It was still morning and he could launch the final attack tomorrow morning. Ah! Landao showed a surprised expression. Before the city wall was broken, he attacked the final attack? Don't understand. Leonor frowned. Yes, Your Majesty. Landao came to his senses and quickly accepted the order and said yes, and then hurriedly went to find the lords and nobles to reorganize the army. Leonor watched Landao leave and waved his hands to the soldiers on the scene. Stop! Let's rest today. After saying that, he ignored everyone and turned around and left. He also wanted to go to see the armored plat and prepare for tomorrow's battle. At night, Landao came again and reported to Leonor the prepared attack sequence. He prepared 1,000 of the strongest and bravest knights, equipped them with great swords, daggers, and plate armor, as well as a large number of small boats and wooden ladders, intending to attack Qian City from the sea and land in one breath. It's very good, encourage those knights. My promise remains unchanged. At the same time, the first person who roars the flag will be rewarded with 100 households and 3,000 golden dragons. Leonor also gave the reward of killing the flag. Yes. Landao responded, silent for a long time, looked up and saw Leonor's quiet look, and couldn't help saying. Your Majesty, please forgive me for your offense. The walls of Qian City have not been opened yet. Are you planning to attack the city from the sea? Thank you for your trust. Leonor looked at Landao and smiled. It was difficult for Earl Jiaoling to hold on to the problem until now, but he was still not ready to say, you just need to be prepared to siege the city. I will open the wall of tomorrow for you. Okay. Landao could only shut up and leave when he saw Leonor keep the secret. After Landao left, the curtain of the tent was lifted, Namelia and Terani walked in, and the 2 sand snakes were holding the black armor belonging to Leonor in their hands. Come on. Leonor opened his arms and asked Namelia and Terani to prepare their clothes, then put on the chain mail, then put on the plate armor, tie the arms, and finally tie it. Skirt armor. My Majesty, how do you plan to open the walls of Qian City? Namelia tied Leonor's skirt armor and looked up at Leonor for asking. Guess. Leonor looked down at Namelia's pretty face full of exotic style, and the corners of her mouth curled slightly, not moved by her little movements. Namelia wanted to make the soft pattern commonly used by noble women, but she found that she could not say please words, even if it had been brewing several times. I could open my mouth, but instead felt my arms tightening and I was picked up from the ground. Leonore grabbed Namelia's arm, picked her up from the ground, and then kissed her thin lips directly, extremely domineering. Namelia was at a loss. Tarini next to her saw this situation and quietly stopped and stepped aside, watching Namelia go from unfamiliar to responding, and then wait for her to stretch out her arms to hug Leonore. When the other party broke away. "It's good to see tomorrow." Leonore pulled away Namelia, who was holding her like a leprechaun, as if a leprechaun was sucking yang energy, and let the flushed sand snake watch the show tomorrow. "What am I yours?" Namaria wiped her mouth and asked back. "Lovers. Do you still want to be a queen?" Leonore replied without hesitation. "What if I want?" Namelia asked. "Then you may have to wait." Leonore's eyes tilted slightly, and he replied as if it was true or false. "When is it? Are you really going to let me be the queen?" Namelia felt that Leonore was joking. "Do you think I care about your identity as an illegitimate daughter? Unfortunately, in my opinion, an illegitimate daughter is no big deal." Leonore drew a cake for the sand snake. Chapter 74. That night, Leonore hugged Namelia and kissed and spent it in a cake for the sand snake. It was not that he didn't want to do anything, but that he didn't dare to waste it on women before the battle. Energy, after all, swords on the battlefield don't joke with him. When the sun rose again from the ridge in the east, the atmosphere in the entire military camp began to heat up. Perhaps the final battle is coming, or perhaps it is flirting with the opposite sex. Although Leonore has not slept all night, he is quite energetic. When he comes to the formation, he is still energetic and holds the spike of the 7-pointed star in his arms. Finally came to Landeo. "Your Majesty, when the drums sound here and your royal flag is raised, it is time for us to launch a general attack." Landeo pointed to the 7 battle drums around the command platform and the light flagpole standing in the middle. Leonore glanced at the bare flagpole, and the strong man with his upper body naked in front of each war drum, nodded slightly, looked up at the brilliant morning glow in the sky, and the nail in his arms raised the hammer, pointing the hammer to the distance. Qian City. Facing Leonore with the hammer raised and pointed far away, Landeo was a little confused. Just when he didn't know whether he should order an attack, a loud bang came in his ears, and the earth trembled violently, making him unable to help it. He shrank his head and stood there on the spot when he turned his head. The cave rock fort, which should have been curled up in the sea, was shaking like a giant. The giant city seemed to be stretching its body. The mountain surface that was originally the city wall was shattered into countless pieces in the loud bang, and purple spurted out from the cracks of the rocks. The green flames, white smoke and flames held countless gravels and threw them into the sky. The dust and smoke gathered into a mushroom cloud, rising slowly in the air. The spectacular scene, let alone the Blue Deo and the entire army, even Leonore himself was shocked. When all the dust settled, half of Qian City facing the land had completely collapsed, revealing the empty mountain belly inside. You can see the palace decorated with gold and countless bright red lions roaring flags. When the rocks with gunpowder fell to the ground and the ocean, it made a huge sound to bring back everyone, including Landeo. Leonore was also shocked by the explosion, but he remained calm. When the dust settled, he looked at the collapse of Qian City, and thought to himself that it was a pity, and commanded Landeo. "What are you waiting for? God bless my king, God bless my king." Landeo came to his senses, raised the sword in his hand, shouted while waving it, calling everyone's mind, and then ordered people to raise the flag and beat the drum. Dong 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 dong. The tight drum sounded, and the bright yellow flag embroidered with the crown and the stag were raised in the air. After the signal composed of the flag and the war drum conveyed the order of the general attack, in front of the dusty Qian City, 400 knights who had already been on standby immediately went to Qian City. An attack was launched. 400 knights in armor approached Qian City, mounted the wooden ladders and boards they carried to the trench that served as moats, and then passed through this natural danger one after another, approaching the broken mountain wall, and entered on the gravel inside the city. Lan Road prepared 1,000 people, including 400 people in front, and another 600 people prepared small boats from the side, preparing to go along the waterway from the cave port at the foot of the mountain behind Qian City. The water and land were used to attack, and the preparations were complete, but unfortunately he had no choice but to do so. The city wall that was less than the front was broken by gunpowder. The 400 people in the front were almost blocked and attacked the city without any obstruction. When the soldiers attacked the city, Landeo reacted and shouted loudly to the second and third siege teams, leaving the infantry responsible for clearing the roads. When riding a horse into the city, the knights who boarded the boats on both sides also had to launch an attack. Receive the 400 people who were attacking the city, and not give the defenders in the city time to react. In Qian City, after a moment of effort, there were fierce shouts of killing and swords colliding. Leonor took Brienne and others to ride on horses and followed the third group of soldiers into the city. The battle in the city was getting intense. There are no more than 10,000 people in Qian City, all of whom are direct relatives and loyal fans of the Lannister family. Apart from the elderly, weak, women and children who cannot fight, there are no more than 6,000 people who can pick up swords. They rely on them. The terrain in Qian City was fought to defend the streets, then retreated step by step, and finally retreated to the Hall of Heroes in Qian City. The Hall of Heroes is the core base camp in Qian City. This is a palace built with gold. When the walls of Qian City are lifted up, it is the most conspicuous. Even on the other side of the sea, the Hall of Heroes is widely known. In addition to the luxury here, there are hundreds of armors installed here. They are all heroic deaths among the Lannister family and their close relatives, the Seven Kingdoms and even the sea. The powerful knights on the other side admired them all, but today they will be bloody here. Leono followed the army and came to the Hall of Heroes. He saw the hall covered with bright red flags and carpets, but there were no armor inside, only a few hundred pieces of armor and clothes that had been placed. Wooden shelf. Probably all the armor was worn on Lannister's warrior. Those armors are valuable only when worn on people, and they are just empty shells there. The crowd was still fighting in front of the Hall of Heroes. The plate-armored knights and Lannister's warriors were pushing each other. The armor was squeezed with the armor, and there was no room for wielding the sword. Only the cold-armored kids started with a short sword. During the melee, the crowd was in a state of turmoil, and suddenly a loud roar was heard, and the warriors on both sides were forcibly separated. A white horse rushed out of the Hall of Heroes, and a shining man wearing golden armor, a golden cloak and a golden lion helmet sat on it. The shining man waved a great sword and rushed through a road, swaying his sword in front of Leono's army. "I'm Tywin Lannister, Leono Baratheon, Leono Baratheon, Leono Baratheon." Tywin, wearing golden armor, shouted 3 times to calm the battlefield. Everyone's eyes looked at Leonor, who was wearing black armor, covered with squids and riding behind the army. Behind him is the king of the crowned stag flag. Tywin found Leonor's place from everyone's eyes and the yellow king flag, and pointed at the great sword in his hand. "Leonor Baratheon, if you don't want to insult your ancestor's name, accept my duel. At this time, if you want to make a duel, your son should appear, not yourself, old man." Leonor looked at old Tywin, who was like a golden Saint Seiya, and while complaining in his heart, he reached out and wanted to ask Brienne next to him to take the big sword Han Bing. This duel cannot be refused unless he is not present. Tywin Lannister. A decisive roar stopped Leonor's movements. The sound came from Oberon behind him. "I am Oberon Martell. In the name of Queen Namelia, you will pay for my sister's life." Oberon wore a brown light armor with metal plates and leather today, and he rode a horse. The Black Horse challenged her to claim her blood debt from her sister Ilya Martell. Chapter 75. Oberon issued a challenge under the banner of seeking blood feud for his sister. After saying that, he didn't wait for Tywin to respond, and rode his horse out in the battle with a spear in his hand, running directly to Tywin, who was like a Saint Seiya, and killed him. Tywin challenged Leonor in a leader showdown. He never expected that Dun's Red Viper would jump out to fight, and he had no time to react, so he had to ride a horse to fight. Oberon and Tywin fought one-on-one in front of the two armies. Some people in Leonor's camp could not sit still. Lolas, wearing flowery armor and pointed helmets on his head, rode his horse in front of the formation with a sword and shouted, "I am Lorasteriel of the High Court, and under the witness of the 7 gods, I challenged Roland Kretch of the Rose Hall." Loras roared twice, and a strong man with a thick beard jumped out of the crowd. He held a sword and shield, stretched out his hand to push away the Lannister warrior blocking the road, walked directly to Loras, slapped the shield with his sword. Long he responded, "I am Roland Kretch, the Lord of the Racket Hall, and I accept the challenge in the name of the 7 gods." Adhering to the principle of a knight's one-on-one challenge, Lolas directly crossed his legs and walked around the saddle, jumped off his mount, threw the sword to the follower next to him, and then took a battle axe from him. After dancing the battle axe over his head, Lolas didn't even want to say anything on the scene, and directly gave a jump to the other side, but was blocked by the other party's shield. With a bang, the axe blade slashed into the shield. The old Roland Kretsch looked a little difficult. Before he could fight back, the shield in his hand lightened and was pulled out by Loras with an axe. Loras pulled back the axe, took away the round shield from Roland's hand, and then slashed it with another axe, forcing the other party to dodge in a hurry. Xi Lulu, a horse neighed in the field. Tywin's horse's mount was killed by Oberon's spear, and Tywin, wearing golden armor, fell off the horse. Tywin was wearing golden armor, and even the cloak was woven from gold thread. It was extremely heavy and could only sit on the horse and move. Now he was dragged to the ground, and the cloak was crushed by the horse corpse, and he was wrapped in an instant. There. Oberon is not as knightly as Lolas. He sat directly on the horse and pulled the spear back, slapped the spear on Tywin's head, knocking the old lion dizzy, and the ruby-covered one on top of the head. The lion's helmet was swept off. Stop! At the same time when the old lion was attacked, the crowd made a loud shout, and James Lannister, dressed in gilded armor, emerged from somewhere, and cut off the black horse under Oberyn with one sword. Save his father! Foul! It's a regicide! This is a duel! The crowd was full of commotion and scolded. Both Brienne and other knights shouted loudly for James Lannister not to abide by the duel rules, and Oberyn next to Lyanna was about to rush up with a spear, but Namlia was held back. In the field, although James Lannister intervened in the duel, he did not take advantage of the situation to rob Oberon, but turned around to help his father up. However, the old lion was not very grateful and directly reached out to push him away. The old lion pushed his son away, grabbed the golden cloak behind him, turned around and cut off the shackles of the golden cloak with his sword, got rid of the heavy and shining equipment, and then walked back to Oberon without saying a word. Holding the hilt of the sword in both hands, he raised the sword over his head, signaling the Duke with Oberon to continue. "Give me a spear." Oberon threw away the spear that appeared in his hand, then took the spear thrown by Obiah and continued his duel with Tywin. Lyanna Baratheon, in the name of the seven gods, I challenge you. If you lose, you will immediately admit defeat. James Lannister was anxious when he saw his father's desperate efforts. Raise your sword to challenge Lyanna. Give it to me. Lyanna said to Brienne, drew the great sword from her hand, feeling the lightness of the Valyrian steel sword, and then jumped off the horse and strode away. Go to James Lannister. I will put your armor in this hall, you are the only one. Lyanna raised his sword over his head, gently slashed forward 2 times, and tried the distance. James Lannister didn't speak, holding a sword in one hand and picking up the round shield that Roland had just been knocked out by Lolas from the ground with the other. James, with one sword and the other shield, slowly approached, and Lyanna looked at the regicide. After he entered the distance of the sword blade of the ice, he slashed over without hesitation. With countless stripes of sword blades swung, James did not raise his shield, but instead greeted him with the sword blade, while protecting the shield beside him and directly hit Lyanna. With a clanging sound, half of the sword blade fell to the ground. James stopped moving forward with a shield hitting across the surface, and looked down at the sword that was slashing into his waist from one side. To be honest, if you don't challenge me, I'm going to put on you in a black robe. Lyanna said to the incredible James. He was not going to stay any of Lannister's people except this James Lannister. The regicide did not speak and sent him a puzzled look. You killed Aerys too, and I found the wildfires he hid from the underground of King's Landing. Lyanna answered the regicide's question. He was willing to save this guy's life because of the people of King's Landing. For some. James Lannister frowned, feeling his waist and ribs hurt, but before he could speak, he felt a dizzy moment, and a headless corpse in gold-plated armor appeared in his dim pupils. You've wasted your chance. Lyanna pulled back the ice expressionlessly, shaking the blood beads from the sword on the handsome face of James Lannister. Seeing his son die in front of him and his head was cut off, the old lion Tywin could no longer resist Oberon's offensive, and was thrown down by him again, lying on the ground and trying to crawl towards his son's body. But one foot stepped on the vest. Blood is returned to blood. Oberon stepped on Tywin, smiled slightly at him, his hand raised his spear and fell. The tip of the spear penetrated from behind Tywin's head and penetrated from his throat. As soon as Lannister and his son died, a warm shout broke out on the scene, and they turned their eyes to Roland and Loras, who were finally playing the second game at this time. Roland threw away the shield in his hand and dealt with Loras, who was holding a battle axe, with only a sword. Feeling all the gazes, the pressure on the Lord of the Rabbit Hall suddenly increased, and Loras was like taking stimulants, and the battle axe in his hand was blowing one after another, one by one. Finally, with a click, the axe blade fell, and the metal helmet fragments flew up with the brain. The Lord of the Rose Hall and the teacher of James Lannister, Roland Cretch, was slapped by the Knight of Flowers. The axe splits his head and dies completely. Except for the Lannister, the others who surrendered were exempted from death. Seeing that all 3 duels ended in victory, Liano also ended the war, exempting the deaths of others in Kian City and reducing unnecessary losses. Resistance and killing. His path to becoming a king will not be lacking in bones. Lannister of Kian City is the first, but definitely not the last. Chapter 76. As most of the soldiers in Kian City put down their weapons, the army began to clear out the remnants of Lannister who were still resisting at the end of the road, detained surrendered soldiers, the elderly, weak, women and children, and screened them, either killed or pardoned them. Cersei Lannister and her 3 children were found in the stone garden, and according to her maid's report, Cersei poisoned Joffrey, Tommen and Myra with mercury, while also ending herself with this life. Buried it after confirmation. Leonor sat on the golden staircase of the Hall of Heroes. Listening to Arad's report, he waved his hand directly, too lazy to take a look. After Arad left, Dickon also came over and said to Leonor on the stairs, "Your Majesty, Duke Tiriel is here." "I understand, please come over." Leonor straightened his body and sat on the golden stairs for a while. Then he saw Mess Tiriel following Dickon, shaking his big belly, and walking over excitedly. "Haha, my Majesty, why are you still sitting here?" Lord Inflatable opened his arms to Leonor from a distance and looked enthusiastic. "My sir, why are you here?" Leonor moved his butt and gave up a position on the golden steps for Mr. Inflatable Fish. Mess Tiriel didn't dislike it at all, and sat down next to Leonor, while chatting, saying in an extremely exaggerated tone. "What did I come? My Majesty, you are so exaggerated. You have achieved such a great victory. How could I not come? If I don't come, who will witness your coronation ceremony and wedding ceremony?" "Haha." Leonor smiled and said nothing. He knew that this guy was working for the matter of crowning and marriage. "You are still planning to be crowned here, right? Although this place is not as grand as the Baylor Cathedral, well, it is still memorable, but I think it's better to hold a wedding in King's Landing. Let the civilians in King's Landing let's share this joy too." Mess Tiriel advised hard, suggesting Leonor holds a wedding in King's Landing and Kai Rock. "It costs money to hold a grand event." Leonor reminded Messe. "It's okay, we can pay the money." Metz took over the big deal. "Haha, if that's the case, I'll think about it, and I won't discuss it now." Leonor smiled silently. He had just solved Lannister, and Tiriel came to his door. It was indeed the present world report. Ah! In order to obtain the help of the Tyrier family, he promised to continue his agreement with Lanley and Huandi to marry the little Rose Margaret of the Tyrier family for Lanley. This transaction is far from being a marriage. The Margaret and the Tiriel family have never met men, and they don't really care about the title of queen. They are interested in the future power of the kingdom. A new round of Game of Thrones has begun. Leonor reminded himself in his heart, then cheered up and listened to the miserable ceiling of Metz next to him. In this case, the crowning and wedding of Baylor Cathedral will be put on. How are you preparing now? When will the ceremony begin? What title are you going to be crowned with? Who are you going to be your crowning person? To marry the witness? Have you brought a crown? Are you planning to get married in armor? When asked by the father-in-law of the inflatable fish, Leonor himself was also confused. He was either deeply involved in the vortex of power or leading troops to fight in the past few months. How could he have the energy to consider so many things? You are not prepared for nothing, right? The inflatable fish couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Leonor's confused expression. This guy was not concerned about such a big deal? Haha, how could it be? How could it be? Leonor called, I think that what you mentioned is nothing big except the crowning title. No, there is nothing small about this matter. Mess sternly raised his face and corrected Leonor's words. How could this be a small matter? Yes, you're right. Leonor didn't want to argue with Metz. The inflatable fish was his father-in-law, and he would do whatever he said. Then tell me, what preparations have you made? Metz continued to ask. I think there is nothing wrong with armor. What about the crown? My brother Robert's crown is not known where it is. I can't find it. I think Tywin's golden armor is good. It's enough to melt it and make it into a crown. Crown and get married. The faster the ceremony, the better, and the most important thing is the crowning claim. Leonor answered in an orderly manner. How can you do this? Margaret is my only daughter. He is the rose of our Tyrier family. You can't be careless. Mess said a little earnestly, first educated her, and then said, I don't think so. Leave these things to me and I'll help you. How can you be so embarrassed? My lord, other things are okay. The crowning title is not counted after we say it. What title do you want me to be crowned? Leonor said it was okay for other things, but the crowning title was the only one. Title is of great importance. In Westeros' default current legal system, the title of king is directly related to the king's personal power and the claim of the king. For example, Daenerys, who declares to everyone that she cannot stand in the house. Born of the storm Daenerys, the unburned, the mother of the dragon, the queen of the dragon, the Khaleesi of the prairie, the queen of Myr, the king of Andals, the Loinas and the ancestors, ruled by the seven kingdoms, the guardian of the entire territory, the liberator, the shackles were broken, the queen of the seven kingdoms, and the princess of the Dragonstone Island. In addition to some titles obtained for personal special or achievements, some titles are claimed to exist for territory and country. For example, Daenerys declares herself as the king of the Andals, the Loinas and the ancestors, the ruler of the seven kingdoms, the guardian of the entire territory, the queen of the seven kingdoms, and the princess of the Dragonstone Island. She is concerned about people claim these titles to show outsiders her determination to return to Westeros to regain the Iron Throne. Robert's crowned at that time was the title of the king of the Andals, the Loinas and the ancestors, ruins of the seven kingdoms, and guardian of the whole country. In addition, he also has user Kurz, Trident River, the titles of Devil and Customer King, but you can't talk about these things casually. Leonor wants to be crowned in Kian City, and can inherit the titles of the Andals, the Loinas and the ancestors, ruins of the seven kingdoms and guardians of the whole country, but he wants to take this matter to take a look. The reactions of the princes in the whole territory. Westeros' only king, the ruler of the seven kingdoms, guarding the entire territory. What do you think? Mess immediately came to his interest when he saw Leonor ask about his opinion. Well, this is for me to go to awesome places, so that you can inherit your grandson, Margaret's son, and I, in the future. Leonor saw through the inflatable fish at a glance and responded with a smile. This also depends on His Highness Oberron and the response from the north. He always felt that titles should be recognized, such as First Emperor, Tien Khan, Emperor Manjushri, etc. He claimed that he was just a declaration with political metaphor. Let's see what everyone's reaction is. Let's talk about it. Chapter 77. When Mesteriel heard Leonor mention Dorne and the North, he felt that this matter was indeed necessary to contact them, so he sat on the golden steps and slapped his knees. Then what are we waiting for? Seeing that Mess was so proactive, Leonor waved and asked Dickon to inform the person. At the same time, he asked Arad to bring tables and chairs and arrange the discussion site first. There have been soldiers in the magnificent Hall of Heroes to clean up the bodies. At this moment, they have been packed up and the blankets soaked in blood have been removed. Arad directed the soldiers to bring tables and chairs from other places, put wine, fruits, and food, and arranged the scene quickly. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound rang in the Hall of Heroes like a war drum, endlessly, which made all the soldiers who were setting up the venue stop. Even Leonor, who was sitting on the steps, could not help but turn around and look sideways. He looked up at the hall where there was no sound source, but it made a sound. Don't worry, this is the sound of the tide. The Hall of Heroes is built on the seashore. Whenever the tide rises, such a sound will appear in the entire hall. The inflatable fish is not surprised by the sudden sound. Anno explained. Is that true? Leonor was a little strange. This Kian city was built in the entire stone mountain, and gold was piled up inside the hall. It was a magical craft. I didn't expect that it could resonate with the sea tide and speak out. It was a bit mysterious. It was a bit of a mystery. Now, just as all the soldiers slowly adapted to the situation and continued to arrange the venue, Leonor and Metz were chatting in the echoes in the Hall of Heroes. Oberon walked in from outside the hall with great strides. He opened his arms and asked Leonor in the sound that was still echoing. Does this sound like a war drum? You know too. Leonor was a little surprised. He had never been to Kian City, right? Of course, I didn't tell you that I had visited K-Rock City with my sister before. My mother wanted to facilitate our marriage with the Lannister twins. Well, I just wanted me to marry Cersei, let me sister Ilya married James Lannister. Oberon spoke while showing an expression of unbearable memories in the past. I'm so glad that Lannister refused, otherwise I wouldn't be able to kill him like that. Your Highness, there is no need to reminisce about the past. Let him go over the past. Leonor sighed in his heart when he saw Oberon speak easily. Who said he wouldn't let him go? Oberon picked a chair and sat on it, unwilling to argue with Leonor in this regard. Say it. What's the matter with you finding me here? That's right, Your Highness Oberon, I have a very good idea and want to discuss it with you. Maze patted his stomach with both hands and got close to Oberon. Good idea? Oberon raised his eyebrows calmly, glanced at the cheerful inflatable fish, full of doubts about his words, but he did not show it, and put on a look of you said, I'm listening. Look, what is the right title for our Majesty when he was crowned? Mess asked first, and then without waiting for Oberon to answer, he said, I think, in order to deepen the relationship between our 7 kingdoms. The connection and deepen the friendship between the people is worse than changing the title of His Majesty our King. Look, how about this title, the only king in Westeros? After hearing Mess's self-talk, Oberon showed a resolute expression on his face, but he was too lazy to say anything to this inflatable fish, just looking at Leonor. Is this what you mean? Your Highness, this is the suggestion given to me by Lord Tyriel. Leonor did not dare to take the blame and secretly told Oberon that I was pinned by the Tyriel family. His Royal Highness Oberon, you can send a Prince Doran. Mess also tried to persuade Oberon to send the crow back to Yangji City, and first ask Prince Doran about his opinion. No need to send a crow, I can reply to you now, Lord Mess, this is impossible. Your proposal will not be approved by the princes of Dorne, and the princes of the northern border will object even more. If you do not believe me, you can send the crow to ask yourself. Oberon replied directly. It was Metz's turn to sit on the wax. Titles and titles are all indifferent. My sir, thank you for thinking about me. Seeing Messe sitting on wax, Leonor spoke out and advised him not to care. Haha, I want to get a good title for you. When Mess heard Leonor's words, he came back to his senses and showed a smirk. Of course, I understand, and thank you for your advice, Your Highness. Leonor comforted Metz and thanked Oberon. Without Oberon's strong opposition, if Mess really wanted to send the crows, Leonor's temptation would probably lead to a huge diplomatic accident. No. Oberon took a deep look at Leonor, afraid that he would have any ideas, so he added. Don't think about things you shouldn't think anymore. Just inherit the title of your brother Robert and sit on the Iron Throne to accept surrender. Of course, that's what I think. Leonor laughed. If a man doesn't have a dream, then what's the difference between it and a salted fish? He hasn't arrived yet. I hope so. Oberon nodded and warned that if Leonor really wanted to be the only king, then except for Huandi, there might no longer be his friends in the country, including himself. Speaking of this, Your Highness, what are you going to deal with Kian City? Leonor pulled the topic apart. Kai Rock City. Oberon didn't come back to his senses. Did you forget my declaration? Tywin killed it with your own hands. If we are on your territory, we are your guests. Leonor joked. I can't bring out the wine to entertain you. Oberon took the wine from the table, poured a glass and handed it to Leonor first. Leonor took the wine glass and did not drink it directly, but transferred it to Mess, who could only smile, so that he could drink to relieve his embarrassment. Give me the K-Rock City. I will find an heir among my children. I don't like to stay in a fixed place. Oberon handed Leonor a glass of wine again and accepted the city. Okay. Leonor heard Oberon's words and drank the wine. If nothing unexpected happens, the city should be distributed to Namlia or Terran, becoming their dowry and finally returning to his children are in his hands. After chatting for a while, Oberon drank a pot of wine, and felt that it was not very satisfying. He went to find a drink elsewhere. Mess waited for him to leave and discussed with Leonor for a while about crowning and marriage. Just leave the matter. Leonor sent Oberon and Metz away one after another. Listening to the sound of the tides that were still echoing in the Hero Golden Hall, he narrowed his eyes and leaned on the back of the chair thinking about things. Suddenly he felt someone approaching. He opened his eyes and only seeing Dickon come over. What's the matter? Leonore asked the young Dickon. Your Majesty, I found something in Qian City. Dickon was a little nervous. Hey! Leonore showed a puzzled expression. Is the spoil found in Qian City gold? Chapter 78. Leonore originally thought that Dickon found some gold products at Kalen Castle. After all, this place is famous for producing gold mines. Lannister City even built a Hall of Heroes with gold, and the steps inside are all gold. It is normal to get any gold product. He thought Dickon would take out some weird gold gadget, but he didn't expect the young man opposite to take out a scroll from behind his waist. What? Leonore was a little surprised. He took the scroll from Dickon's nervous expression and spread it straight in his hand. The scroll is made of yellowed and brown parchment paper, which looks old at first glance. After opening it, colorful humanoid images are revealed on it, posing in various super difficult positions. From the image, it seems that there are 2 men and 1 female. What a guy, little emperor picture. Is this a wedding gift for me? Leonore almost laughed at him, and asked Dickon opposite him with one sentence blushed. The little emperor's painting is not uncommon in Westeros. It is a textbook used by people to impart knowledge of gender to future generations, and many nobles and knights will collect it. No, this is what I found in a room in the city. I don't think he looks like a book, it's more like... Dickon blushed, a little hard to speak. What do you think? Leonore asked back and looked down at the sheepskin scroll in his hand. Well, these postures are very fresh and refined to the people of Westeros, but nothing is strange to him, a modern person. Like a magic scroll. Dickon mustered up his courage. Magic scroll. Leonore raised his head and looked surprised. He knew that Westeros had little knowledge, but he would not have regarded this little royal picture as a magic book. Yet. Dickon Tally nodded seriously. He dared not tell Leonore that the scroll was not found by him from Qian City, but was dug out from the cooling castle. The legend was from his first ancestors. Hunter Hailong and Horse Hailaton. These 2 ancestors of Jiaoling are said to be descendants of Gars, the Qings in Huan, and 2 brothers of the first generation of Huan king. They built their own castle on the Horn Tomb and married the forest witches who lived there. Legend has it that they associate with the witches every full moon, so they gained a lifespan far exceeding that of ordinary people. This scroll also comes from it was passed down from the 2 brothers. Because he wanted to please Leonore, who was interested in magic, Landeo Talai took out the scroll passed down from his family and asked Decan Talai to Leonore in the name of the trophy to avoid making the monarch suspicious. How come this is like a magic scroll? Leonore suppressed his smile. Looking like, I heard that the clever Lane is said to have lived to be 312 years old and gave birth to 100 sons and 100 daughters. The man is handsome and the woman is beautiful, all of whom are healthy and agile. Dickon, I made up the reason my father had already made up. I sent something like magic to myself. It seems that everyone knows what I like magic, let them go. Leonore had some alchemy practice process that was seen by people, and knew that the Talai family might have seen this and tried to please him, but he didn't think anything unusual. If his hobbies and interests were ignored by people, that made him look like he didn't. Okay, this thing is considered a wedding gift you gave me. Leonore waved his hand and spread the little emperor's paintings open, preparing to take a critical look. Yes. Dickon Tally retreated with tact, allowing Leonore to quietly watch the magic scroll. Leonore looked at the magic scroll in his hand with a critical look, and suddenly felt a trace of abnormality. He found that on the human-shaped color picture in the scroll, there seemed to be some difficult marks on the body of the 2 men and 1 woman. Those marks it is red dot-shaped, and it is located at the center of the eyebrows, lower abdomen and other key points of men and women. There are almost imperceptible lines connecting them, which continue to move with the joyful movements. Hiss, it seems. Leonore couldn't help but take a breath when he saw the root of the red dot marks clearly. This seemed to be a magic scroll. And it seems to be a dual practice method. There are dual cultivation methods in the Yangshen world, both martial arts and Taoist techniques. Among them, Taoist techniques are the intercourse between gods, which is the entanglement of souls, which is used to nurture thoughts and change temperament. However, those with shallow martial arts use qi and blood to control muscles and muscles, which is profound. This contains the principle of developing acupoints. The more Leonore looked, the more he felt, the more he was excited. The thing Dickon brought seemed to be a real thing. Although it looked rough and primitive, the red dots and lines in it were almost invisible, but it was old and simple and profound. It makes people feel like the spirit and soul entanglement, and it also has the principle of physical acupoints. If this scroll really belongs to the clever Lanan, then the legend can be verified. What is the exaggeration of 312 years old and 200 children? But if you live a longer life and have a lot of children, it is completely understandable because of the dual cultivation. These are the aspects that law strengthens. The more Leonor thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He studied the magic scroll in his hand for a while, wrote down the key points of it, and then closed the scroll. Namlia. Leonor stood up and greeted his female guard. Namlia and Terani, Obaya and Brienne have been by Leono's side, and as Leono talks with Mess and Oberon, they are listening to the echoing tide of the Hall of Heroes relieve the boredom, and didn't care about the scroll that Dickon sent to Leono. He came to his senses only when he was summoned by Leono. The named Sand Snake pointed at him with a cute look on his face and asked if he was looking for him. Namlia, come here, I have something to talk to you about. Leonor nodded affirmatively. Namlia didn't know what Leonor was going to talk about, so she walked up to him and let him hold his hand. You guys rest here first, don't have to follow. Leonor pulled Namlia away, and at the same time stopped Terani, Obaya and Brienne from following. Your Majesty. The honest Brienne was puzzled by Leonor's anxiousness. She just opened her mouth to ask, but was pulled by a thick black hand. Listen to your Majesty. As the eldest sister of the Sword Snake, Obaya saw a clue and didn't want this rough and ugly storm woman to ruin her sister's good things. Brienne, where is your home? Terani, who had a sweet voice, attracted Brienne's attention with her words when she saw her elder sister's angrily voice. The Mulan Hall of Tas Island. Brienne was very unhappy with the stout Kurono Obaya, but she treated Terran with fair and cute faces and answered her questions truthfully. Where are sapphires produced there? Terani asked with a smile. Why do you think so? Brienne was a little puzzled. Mulan Hall was very poor. It was neither located at the important point of the waterway nor had good mining resources. Why did she think that sapphires were produced there? Because your eyes look like sapphires. Terani said something and made Brienne's numb face at a loss, then she looked shy. Chapter 79. Leono has never been a person who likes fishing. He just wanted to verify the dual practice method that seemed to be in the magic scroll. However, after he pulled Namlia and found several places in Qian City, I found that no matter where I walked, I could see people, and there was no extra space for him and Namlia. Where are you going to take me? Namlia let Leono pull herself. At first, she had a little premonition and her heart beat a little faster, but when he brought herself to the east and west, she kept stopping. I couldn't help but feel curious. Haha, I just want to take you around. Leonor calmed down. Of course he was embarrassed to tell Namlia that I wanted to find a place to sleep with you, so he made up a reason casually. Then why not let Brienne and the others follow you? Namlia tilted her head. Could it be that she was wrong? Isn't this guy trying to sleep with her? If you want to stay alone with you for a while, your hands are really soft. Leonor opened his mouth and pinched Namlia's little hand. This little hand was not like a martial arts hand that had been practicing for many years, and it felt soft to catch. Is there any? I often use weapons, and my palms often get worn out. Namlia was a little surprised and looked at her palms. Although they were quite white and tender, they were covered with calluses after being rubbed by the weapon. That must be very hard. Leonor listened to Namlia's words, opened her palm and saw that there were indeed some slight calluses, but it was not obvious. In addition, Namlia did not look dark. The skin should be caused by not being serious when practicing martial arts, but at this time, you must mention this matter without opening your eyes. Well, my father is very strict with us. He said that only weapons are our loyal friends. Namlia nodded fiercely. Your Highness is right, but he is too strict with your training. How can you treat girls like this? Leonor complained a little. His originally white and tender little hands were covered with calluses, which really hindered the touch. How should you treat girls? Namlia became interested. Girl. I can't say it well. Leonor dared not say that as long as he is responsible for beauty, girls can be the best as long as beauty, but not every man can afford a woman who is as beautiful as beauty, and tens of thousands of people can have thousands of people beautiful. Hey! Namlia dragged her voice. Every girl has her own beautiful place, just like you. Leonor retracted his mind. He found that he could not find a hidden place for a fair, nor could he learn the rumors of the nobles. The urge to take off your clothes by finding a place, simply gave up the idea of sleeping with Namlia and instead mobilized the emotions first. There is no specific method of practicing both magic and magic in the Tao Sutra, but it mentions some basic concepts of the intercourse between souls and souls. When the intercourse between souls and souls, the more affection the two parties are, the better the effect. Therefore, the practice should focus on cultivating emotions. Sensory stimulation is supplemented. Not to mention how Leonore spoke love words to Namlia in a scattered manner to increase each other's emotions. All the soldiers in Qian City quickly cleaned up the entire city and cleared out all the bodies. It was time to claim it, but no one claimed it. All the corpses were burned into ashes and scattered into the sea to prevent the White Walkers from being conquered as big-headed soldiers. After clearing out the blood and ashes, the soldiers began to decorate the city. Tyrier's family ships transported pots of flowers from the high house, colorful, with the fragrance of flowers to dilute the blood and cover the ruins with brocade curtains. The Tyrier family is very rich, but the supplies prepared to decorate Qian City are still insufficient. There are enough bright red tapestry, but the carpet is not enough to cover the entire Hall of Heroes. Mess is very upset about this and asks Leono's opinion depends on whether other colors of carpet can be replaced. No carpet is needed. Isn't Lannister's flag also bright red? It's very good to use it for laying the floor. Leonor gave his own solution. The lion flag of the Lannister family, I think this is good. Mess was a little worried. After all, it was the top family among the 7 kingdoms, but then he thought, the Lannister family had been banned. To completely eliminate them, use their lion flag to pave the floor in their Qian City. This does not show the power of the Wushu. It is very possible. I don't think the Archbishop needs to be found or something. Leonor cancelled the carpet and brought it up, and at the same time proposed another thing. The crowning usually comes to the Archbishop of the Church, which means that his monarchy is granted by God. Have you changed your mind? Mess' eyes lit up. He had always wanted to act as Leonor's crowning host and witness. No, I want to crown myself. Leonor was embarrassed and rejected Metz's kindness. He didn't even want to accept the divine right of the king, let alone the gift of others. Crown yourself. Metz's expression became solid, which was too anti-traditional. It depends mainly on what you mean. After all, not all the princes attending the ceremony this time are believers of the 7 gods. Leonor said without waiting for Messe to reply, and, I think Margaret's queen crown is not the same. Will I put it on for her? What does this mean? You add a queen crown to Margaret and you add a crown to yourself. These are 2 things. Or do I disagree with you adding a crown to yourself, so don't you want to add a crown to Margaret? When Mess heard Leonor's words, he couldn't help but think a lot and struggled in his heart. Should he express his belief in the 7 gods? Sir, if you think it's offending tradition, then forget it. Leonor just wanted to have a thought, even if the Archbishop gave him a crown, it didn't matter. Anyway, he should liquidate the church in the future. If you want, then you can crown yourself. Metz finally gave up supporting the church. After all, the higher the power of Leonor's king, the higher the power his future grandson will get. Rounded, he Tilly the greater the glory and authority the family will receive. Then you support me. Thank you so much. My father, you are the most reasonable person I have ever met. Seeing Mess agree, Leonor immediately changed his words, saying sweet words are not worth the money anyway. He called me father? Yes, Margaret married him, and he didn't have any problem calling me father. I am the king's father-in-law, not that is equivalent to his father. Mess was dizzy when he was shouted by Leonor's words father, showing a happy expression. When he came to his senses, he felt that he was inappropriate. He coughed and said with a tense face. You must treat Margaret well in the future. The most important thing is to let her conceive your child earlier, and the more the better. Only in this way can the Baratheon family flourish again. You don't have many immediate relatives. Mace said it seriously. Children will definitely have more children, but it is hard to say that they were not born by Margaret. Leono complained in his heart that if only Margaret was pregnant with his child, he would not be restricted by Tyriel's relatives to death. He complained in his heart, but his face remained calm and continued to flatter Lord Mays with a smile, feeling that his pretentious posture and bulging belly became amiable. Chapter 80. The Andals, the Loinas, and the ancestors successively established many kingdoms on the land south of the Great Wall in West Eros. After many competitions, they formed the northern border, the eastern border, the Hegian border and the western border. The 7 alliance kingdoms dominated by River Bayland, Stormland, and Dornland stand together. Aegon Targaryen, a Valyrian, came here. He rode a flying dragon and saw the entire West Eros continent, and drew it on a map, and finally unified the place with the flames of the dragon. Re-enfest the princes of the 7 kingdoms, but his kingdom did not have a specific name. This land has always been called 7 Kingdoms or Knight's Kingdom, even Westeros it's just a relatively uncommon geographical noun. Now, with the western princes, mainly Kian City, being destroyed by Liano, the names of the 7 kingdoms can actually be swept into the historical pile, because a brand new country is about to appear. With everything ready, the city of Cairhrock, which had been broken, was decorated with golden crowned stag flags and bright red carpets, becoming the city's main tones. Before the agreed day, Alina Redwyn, known as the Queen of Thorns, came to Kian City as the last major guest. The old woman did not enter the city immediately, but stood in the city looking at the exterior. It once looked like a giant, but now it was covered by golden silk and king flags, covering the city's broken Kian City. What a pity! It used to be so majestic, now it is like a bitten apple. Alina complained about Liano's destruction of Cairhrock City. Mom! Lord Mess, who was in charge of the greeting, rushed over, his face full of caution and anxiety. Okay, I understand. I'm here. Are you still anxious for a while? Alina looked impatient. Are there any customers in addition to me? The princes in the north did not come, the Bronze Joe of Fury City arrived, Edmure and Blackfish in the Running City came, and Loosebotten of the North Terror Fort are also here. Mess muttered as he arrived. Big guys. Where are the Starks people? Alina's shriveled mouth bulged. Not coming. Robb Stark is said to be injured, and he sent people to search for his father in the river. The wolf cubs from the Stark family are not convinced of us. Alina showed a disdainful smile, and said in a very affirmative tone, what should you do if your son-in-law is going to do? He said he didn't care. He actually wanted to start the wedding very early. He asked me to say that it would be too sloppy, and the king's wedding would have to be generous. How could there be no nobles attend? Mess said in a nagging manner. You're just a fool. Alina scolded without hesitation. Mom, you. Mess stopped talking, his expression became aggrieved. Why did he scold himself again? Is he wrong? Is His Majesty the King wrong? His army is here, and that is the best witness to his coronation ceremony and wedding. You idiot dragged the ceremony for so long and spent countless money and food is just to wait for a group of waste who only knows how to eat and drink. How could I have a son like you? Alina was full of regret. But now it's like this. Mess was not angry when he was scolded by his mother. He was scolded a lot for some things. That's it. Get rid of the crowning example and ceremony as soon as possible. Alina's face hurt. The Tarayar family paid all the fees for this crowning ceremony. Thanks to the little king, he made a promise to let the High Court had reason to exempt the military expenses, and Loras killed Roland Cranch in this war, and according to the agreement, the Tarayar family could get the chicken hall, which was not considered to be nothing. Okay. Mess nodded quickly. After Alina, the old grandmother, took her seat, the coronation ceremony in Kian City officially began. Buckets of wine were piled up, and large sausages and steaks were piled up on the plates, allowing people to enjoy themselves. When used, the wine and meat dilute the smoke of gunpowder, and the noise covers the blood. In the magnificent Hall of Heroes, under the Golden King flag hanging, lords and knights from all over the country stood together, watching Liano standing on a golden platform. He was wearing a black robe today, a golden ribbon with a crowned stag hanging on his shoulders, standing on the stage with a fat archbishop who looked like a ball, facing away from 7 colorful curtains painted with gods, and receiving the attention of everyone. The archbishop, who was as fat as a ball, stood in front of him and made a loud statement to all the guests. Today, we stand here, under the gaze of the 7 gods, witness Leonor Baratheon I as King of Andals, Loinas and ancestors, guardians of the entire territory, and the Summer Prince of Hall, Duke of Stormland. After the loud announcement, a servant brought a wooden plate. A golden crown was placed on the red silk inside the plate. The crown was in the shape of a grass ring, with huge antlers and trees distributed on it, and a 7-pointed star was engraved on the forehead. Several bright rubies of varying sizes are embedded around it. The crown was made of Tywin's outrageous golden armor, and even the ruby was buckled from the lion statue of the armor. The fat archbishop held the crown with both hands, turned around and walked to Liano, nodded slightly at him, signaling him to bow down so that he could put the crown on him. Leono ignored the archbishop's sign, snorted coldly in his heart, stretched out his right hand and took it to you. Seeing that Leonor did not cooperate, the archbishop sighed in his heart and could only hand over the crown as planned. Taking the crown with antlers, trees, and 7 stars, Leonor walked to the front of the stage, facing the lords and knights. Under their gaze, he raised the crown in his hand over his head and then slowly landed on it. Overhead, the Andals, the Loinas, the ancestors and the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, the guardian of the whole territory, the prince of the Midsummer Hall, and the duke of the Stormland, hear the swearing to the 7 gods. In the name of the Father, I will make justice come to my kingdom. In the name of the Virgin, I will make my people rich. In the name of warriors, I will fight to defend the country. In the name of a girl, I will defend all women. In the name of blacksmith, my kingdom will have food. In the name of the old woman, I will seek all wisdom to make the nation peaceful. In the name of a stranger, as a king, facing the front, I will be fearless. Wow! The trumpeters in the living room struggled to pluck their cheeks, making the 77 horns sound together, and a roar sounded in the Hall of Heroes at the right time, and the tide also responded. The huge sound made many soldiers in Qian City outside. They all stopped what they were doing and looked towards the direction of the Hall of Heroes. With the horns, the tides, the surrounding lords and nobles and soldiers outside the city, countless tangible and invisible eyes, Leono felt his heart surging, and the soul in his body expanded infinitely, without any visualization, and consciousness extended outside the body. Sweep through every corner of the Hall of Heroes, then look outward, and see the entire Qian City and everyone in the city. Breakthrough. Chapter 81. The soul broke through, not only broke through, but also broke through 2 levels of realms in a row, breaking through from the realm of driving objects, and directly reaching the realm of possession. It is only the last level before you can pass through the barrier of life and death and become a ghost immortal. Taking the country as one, taking oneself as one's holy emperor, and taking all the people as one's thoughts, governing mountains and rivers, and prevailing all things, so that they can unite the sun, moon, heaven, and earth. Leono thought of a sentence mentioned in the Taoist scriptures in his mind, suppressing his thoughts of being ready to move, and understanding his own situation. He was invisibly entering the path of the Holy Emperor with the country as his body. The cultivation of Taoism in the Yangshen world is mainly based on the thoughts of the soul and the mind, which is mainly based on the enlightenment of every thought. Most practitioners in the Yangshen world mainly focus on their own visualization and conditioning, but there are also social practices. Those who create their own theories based on their own understanding and conduct governance experiments in the country, and do not practice anything at all on weekdays. The magic used by the soul is just to focus on nourishing the soul. When the country's governance is successful, it can leave the soul out of its body. At that time, not to mention becoming a ghost immortal in one day, it is even to survive 6 thunder tribulations in one breath. Can. Practitioners in the Yangshen world call this method of practice the Saint Emperor's Way, because most of the people who practice this method are the leaders of the human race in that world, as saints in Confucianism, and as saints and practitioners. Leonor accidentally entered this path of cultivation, from Fengzi Fort and Red Fort to the management of the Midsummer Hall, to the imperial meeting to endure the hidden reputation and intrigue until he took advantage of the situation and mobilized the troops. These behaviors are all trainings to one's own soul. Now that they have stepped on Qian City, successfully crowned, and ushered in the eyes of all people, they are a small test, and their thoughts are naturally understood, and the realm of soul has also been formed along the way. In fact, he was too reckless earlier. If he had not been eager to achieve success in Red Fort when he was a teenager and had recklessly left his soul out of his body, he would have failed to cultivate any practical magic, but he had just slaughtered some things such as purple thunder gunpowder and black gold silk. On the contrary, he was worried that his soul was weak and he never dared to go out of his body and sneak out, for fear of being frightened by lightning and being frightened. If he can be more tolerant, then at this moment, his soul will be able to break through all the way, directly enter the realm of ghost immortals, and escape from the life and death of mortals. However, in that case, his body without the marrow of being washed away will inevitably not be able to support him. If you keep it, your soul will turn around your body, causing the chi and blood to decline. You will definitely be able to be disintegrated and die on the spot. This is a drink and a peck. Leono instantly sorted out his origins, sighed in his heart, and stopped the divine thoughts that were constantly spreading, and swept across everyone's faces in the Hall of Heroes, shaking their expressions and emotions such as excitement and worry. It is all in my heart, no matter how far or near, it is all like a positive face, and my thoughts are in slightest. The soul has broken through to the realm of possession, and no longer needs to use visualization to remove the soul from its body. It only needs a thought to shine on the surroundings, as if it had seen with your own eyes. At the same time, his soul can also fit all kinds of flesh and blood bodies. Being able to possess animals and humans is called the model changer in Westeros magic system. Do you want to find a small thing to try now? Leonorth could not help but think of the change of form, and his mind expanded again, sweeping over the horses in the stables in the city and the birds in the sky. As long as he wanted, he could occupy these small things with one thought. The bodies of animals, then run or soar naturally, borrow their bodies to see the mountains, rivers, and earth. Forget it, this is not the time now. Reducing the eagerness in his heart again, Leonor took back his thoughts, stood in the hall, glanced at Metz, who was looking forward to it, and said, "Today, I am here to comfort my brother's soul and at the same time announce a major news that I will marry Margaret Tyrell, the daughter of Lord Metz, Duke of the Huandon High Court, as my bride." Wow, even though everyone in the Hall of Heroes was mentally prepared, when they heard Leonor's announcement, the lords and nobles were still talking in a low voice, like the ripples on the lake, becoming wider and wider. "Quiet!" Leonor shouted, and immediately calmed the hall again. His words and deeds now were filled with a great sense of oppression, which was impossible to ignore. "Mr. Mess!" Leonor suppressed the noise of the crowd and turned his attention to Mess in the lower end. "Honor, my honor is my majesty." Mess wore a green robe embroidered with gold rose today, and the brown beard at the corner of his mouth was combed up like a calf's horn. It was very happy. The Tyrier family's long wish will be in him. Achieve it in hand. Mess responded repeatedly and handed out his right arm to Margaret, who looked happy next to him. Margaret is wearing a complex golden long dress today, with brown hair tied into a bun, and 2 strands of curled hair hanging next to her face, making her face look more delicate and beautiful, with elegant temperament, and she smiles with a reserved smile. Reached out and held his father Metz's arm, and walked up to the platform under his leadership, and walked to Leonor. "Your Majesty." Margaret lifted the corner of her skirt and gave a lady's gift. Next to him, a boy brought a silver crown placed on purple silk. This is the crown prepared by the Tyrier family. It is made of silver. It is also made of garland, with roses on it, and the heart of the flower is inlaid with glitter. The bright diamonds shine with the golden palace. "Marguerite Tyrell, here, are you willing to be my bride?" Leonor asked with a silver crown. "I will, in the name of the Father, I will be loyal to you, far better than others." Margaret swore to Leonor in the name of the 7 gods, and asked again. "My Majesty, are you willing to marry me as your queen?" "Will, in the name of the Father, you will become my queen and share my glory." Leonor also made a vow of 7 times, and then took the silver rose crown from the boy's hand and lifted it up. He got up, gestured to everyone, and put it on the little rose's bun. Feeling the crown on top of his head, even though he was scheming, Margaret couldn't help but feel happy. She stood up and looked at Leonor with water. "Come to me." Leonor greeted and asked Margaret to walk from Metz to her side, meaning that she belonged to her from today. By the time Margaret walked from her father to Leonor, her identity had changed from a daughter to a wife, and Mesterol also completed his mission, turned around and walked off the platform, and stood back to the front of the crowd. Standing with the grey-haired Queen Olena, still with a happy expression on her face, which made Mrs. Olena roll her eyes. When Mess re-standing, among the crowd below, a man with a red beard came out and shook his chest to Leonor and Margaret. "Your Majesty, I am Pixar Redwin of Qingting Island, and I am here to offer a gift to you and Queen Margaret. My fleet captured Dragonstone Island in your name yesterday and expelled the fake King Stannis. Captive Princess Shireen Baratheon and the wind-raging knight Davos Seaworth." Wow, the Hall of Heroes became noisy again. Chapter 82. Redwin is one of the most important vassals in the River Bay and is Olena's mother's home. They captured Longstone Island yesterday and came here to offer gifts to Longstone Island today. This is not what I am trying to capture Longstone Island in my name. It should have captured Longshee Island in the name of Margaret. Using Dragonstone territory as a marriage gift is an indication that I regained the tradition of the Targaryen family and gave Dragonstone Island to me and Margaret's future children as a symbol of the Crown Prince. Leonor knew what the river beside was thinking, but laughed loudly. "Very good, Earl of Parker, I'm glad you received your gift. After the evaluation, he stopped talking. The princes in the Hebdo temple were slightly surprised to see this, and the crowd of His Highness came out to offer gifts in a commotion. I am John Reus of Fury City, and I offer gifts to His Majesty and the Queen on behalf of the East. The old man in ancient bronze armor opened the silver box in his hand, revealing an exquisite gold cup, which was covered with inlaid. There were gems, and there were also servants next to them who brought several boxes, full of spices such as beans, cinnamon, saffron, etc., but they were gifts collected by the princes of the eastern region. They were all presented by Yon alone. If the gifts were presented separately, each there are too few personal gifts, so I really can't show it. After John Reus, Ed Mutully, the representative of the city of Running City, stepped forward and apologized for his seriously ill father. He then sent 20 boxes of wine, horses, and wine from Hegiondi specialties. It seems shabby, but it's enough to have that meaning. The Tully family has limited dominance in Hegion and is not rich. They were beaten up by Lannister just now. Following Edmu is Vard Frey of Twin City. This weasel-like old man gave him 10 pairs of sea dogs, 100 dried sea horses, 1,000 Reese beetles, and a volume of Reese portraits. All are supplies in that aspect. After hearing the gift from Twin City, Leono couldn't help but twitch his lips, but nodded and accepted the gift and praised it. After round, the gifts are very long, but from the gifts presented, we can see the gap between the various territories. There are lords who are extremely luxurious and spend thousands of dollars, while there are lords who are poor and poor, cut their flesh and bleeding. Of course, there are also those kinds of he only gave some wool felts, but he was also very fond, and the gift was light, and the affection was heavy. After all, the ruthless and unintentional Lannister was dead. The gifting session passed quickly and the final reward session of the celebration came. According to the initial arrangement, Daikon Talai should have replaced Leonor to read out the reward list of hundreds of people, but he was held down by Leonor before he took office. Mesteriel comes forward. Leonor was wearing black clothes and the ribbon was tilted to his shoulders. He first pressed Dickon, who was about to move forward, and then took a step forward in Margaret's surprised expression. Summons to the nobles. My Majesty. Mess didn't know what Leonor was going to do, so he walked to the front of the stage happily. Mesteriel, Count Pixter regains Dragonstone Island for me. I am very happy. Is there any instruction from you? Leonor asked Mess. Ah? Of course, of course. Mess was stunned at first, and then called haha. He knew about Redwyn, Qingting Island, and rounded it up, it would be okay to be considered his. I often hear people say that victory or defeat can be decided in a distant place. Your wisdom is so extraordinary, so I will appoint you as my king's hand. Wow, this time the hall was really booming, because no one expected that Leonor would give the Tyrier family such a reward. It was not enough to marry their queen, and even let the inflatable fish take the hand of the king. Before the commotion crowd, Metz was already stunned by the sudden news. His expression was joyful and laughing, and he even wanted to jump up and shout, but standing before so many people, he didn't dare to do this. What else can he do besides being delighted? He forgot. Quiet. Leono frowned when he heard the noise in the hall, and an invisible pressure emanated from his center, which immediately suppressed the sound in the hall, making it calm again. Mr. Mess, if you want to take charge of my king's hand, do you understand your mission? Leonor asked Mess, who was helpless down. I understand, mission. Mess answered affirmatively first, and now he promised to become the king's hand first. However, mission, what mission? Your first task is to make your king noble, and the second task is to make the kingdom great. Leonor rolled his eyes in his heart, but his face was still kind. My king is supreme, and in the name of the 7 gods, I will make my king noble and my kingdom great. Mess couldn't wait to sworn, and then say that he became the king's hand first. Thank you for your willingness to assist me in governing the country. Here I announce again that the original ministers of the former meeting of the Imperial Council were reduced from 7 to 3, except for the king's hand, all the others were abolished, and the chief inspector and the great knight were re-established, and everything in the kingdom was established. All the important things are determined by the 3 emperors before the king. Leono announced another order. Wow, this time the noise was even better, because the reduction of the number of people in the imperial meetings meant that the power was more concentrated, especially the king's hand. This position had no fixed responsibilities. According to the previous regulations, when the king was not present, the king's hand, even you can sit on the Iron Throne to perform royal power. Quiet, all quiet. This time, the person who called Leonore quietly was Mesteriel. The inflatable fish was almost knocked out by continuous surprises. Hearing the people on the scene screaming so loudly, he was almost crazy about to look down on the king. Don't worry. Let His Majesty the King finish his words first. I want to see who the Chief Inspector and the Great Knight are. Quiet. Leonore shouted again, calming the palace again. The Great Knight will be Balistan, because he is the captain of the Royal Guard, he is fair and selfless, and he is also the best knight in the world today. I will ask him to re-establish the rank standards and morality of the knights, and to the knights all over the country conduct the assessment. Leonore expressed his expressionless expression to the leader of the Great Knight. No one was present, because there was no rebuttal point. There were many well-known knights in the world today, but they were as flawless as Balistan, really not. General Inspector, His Highness Oberon Martel. Leonore turned his eyes to Oberon, who had always been watching the show in the crowd, and his words kept the red venomous snake's expression. I object. A cry came out from the crowd, and the Bronze John from Fury Stone City in the East Valley directly came out, pointing to Oberon, who was still dull in his expression. Don's red venomous snake does not obey the rules of the night duel, he is not worthy of it. Be the chief inspector. If Balistan was appointed because of his perfect knighthood and morality, then how could Don's Oberon Martel have such qualifications? He was caught having an affair with someone and used poison to cause people to fight with the other party. Death, thus the nickname Red Viper. Chapter 83. Oberon wore a red embroidered gold robe today. Facing the bronze Joian who directly accused him in public, he was not angry. Instead, he showed a playful expression, curled up the corners of his mouth, looked at Leonore with his arms in his arms, and gave him a look. He gave him a what-to-do expression. The chief inspector, instead of the king, supervising the lord, nobles, and knights, any traitor like Tywin Lannister, or a defeated person like Cersei Lannister, can be directly rebuked and reported to the law for review and processing. Even if it is a king, once he finds something bad, he must truthfully advise the king. The king will never blame the inspector for his misconduct. Leonore is not anxious or slow down. Ah! The nobles were stunned. How could this make the inspector even more powerful than the king? His Highness Oberon is well read, has a broad knowledge, and is unruly. His personality is not distinguishing between high and low. He is the one who can remind me and advise me at all times. His Highness Oberon, what do you think? Leonore said to him. Oberon, whose expression turned dark, asked his opinion in a slightly playful tone. It is said that Oberon reads a lot of books and has extensive knowledge. He studied in the school city when he was a teenager and even created 6 of his own necklace rings. However, later he felt bored and chose to drop out of school and instead traveled. On the continent of Ersos, if a person like him is not very knowledgeable, then who knows more? If he is unruly and does not distinguish between high and low, then no one will refute it. His mouth can be compared with the poisonous snake that squirts venom. The skin color of an illegitimate girl is also different. Not to mention whether it is different between high and low, it is said that both men and women eat each other. Can. Faced with Leonore's words, Bronze John suddenly lost his words, and the old knight was even a little embarrassed and annoyed. He felt that the young king was speaking too slowly. If he had said this just now, he would not have jumped out to refute like this. No one spoke at the scene. Oberon also had a dark face. Seeing that he did not reply, Leonore called out again. His Highness Oberon, are you unwilling to assist me? Oberon faced Leonore's playful gaze, and had a dark face, and could only whine the bullet and shout. Glory my king! It is impossible for him to reject Leonore, which means that Yangji City has lost the opportunity to enter the core of the kingdom's power. Glory my king! Mess immediately followed. Even if he had a bastard and a piece of wood, it was enough to successfully take charge of the king's hand and dare not ask for anything else. Whether voluntarily or reluctantly, the nobles present saw that Leonore had successfully won over the river and dormitory and could only recognize the fact that the Baratheon dynasty was restabilized, and spoke with Oberon and Metz. Call. Glory my king! Glory my king! Glory my king! With one shout after another, the sound gradually became neat, as if everyone had become a minister. Dyson tally. After Leonore successfully announced the reduction of the imperial meeting, he retreated to the rear and gave the commander a look. When Dyson received Leonore's gaze, he naturally stepped forward to face everyone, spread out a scroll in his hand, looked at the long list above and began to read. In the name of the Andals, the Loinas, the king of the ancestors and the rulers of the 7 kingdoms, guarding Leonor Baratheon I, His Highness Oberon Martell was named Duke of Kian City, and its taxes belong to it. This is to fulfill Leonor's declaration in the storm and reward those who have won the war in the Battle of Lannister. Oberon Martell gets K-Rock City, Lorasteriel gets Chicken Hall, Blue Road Talai gets Sassfield City, Westward Knight Abal Karanchi gets Silver Mountain City, Stormland Knight John Megwin gets the city of Feast Fire, Ed Muscalin gets the city of Brand, Rihan Rogmer gets the city of Gold Fang, and Knight of the Northland Land, Randall Snow, gets the city of Cliff. Most of the cities in the western region were captured, but there were also some surprises, such as Oxford Town, Deep Mill City, Cock Valley City, Lannister Port and other places. These places were either killed by the lords by the knights in the west, or killed by Leono himself, so all these territories belong to the king personally. In addition to the well-known cities, there are many nobles and knights who have gained military achievements and obtained some small towns and manors in the western region. Not only that, the only exception is Luce Bolton of the North Terror Fort. No city was captured, but considering his outstanding performance among the princes in the northern border, Leono rewarded him with 100,000 golden dragon as military expenses. All those who received the reward as they wished were very happy, while the noble knights who did not receive the territory complained, but this had nothing to do with Leonor. I've given you the opportunity. If you can't find the opportunity to kill people, what does it have to do with me? When the reward ceremony ends, the coronation ceremony and wedding are a successful end, and the next step is to eat and drink. Leonor didn't need to toast the visitors, it would only make people feel uneasy. So after eating something that was confirmed to be safe, he directly removed the golden crown on his head and asked Dickon to put it away, and asked Arad to give it to him. Margaret sent a letter telling her that she had something to deal with and would go to find her when she was done, and then she took Brienne and Sand Snake away. The western region has been basically pacified now, and he is not ready to return to King's Landing City immediately. He has to stay here for 1 to 2 months. While the new nobles have not yet established rule, he will determine the policies here to ensure his subsequent control over the place. He rewarded the territory of the western region and gained some of the territory himself. Among them, the most valuable ones were Lannister Port and Shenjiu City. Shenjiu City is located on the important road of the western region and controls the gold leading to the King's Landing City. The avenue, and the port of Lannister have excellent estuaries and a population of over 100,000. Lannister Port and Deep Crystal City are both good places, but if they cannot be treated correctly, these places will not only not increase their strength, but will become a burden and must be handled with caution. Farm and continue farming. Leonor gave his own territory basic decree in response to the situation in the western region, requiring the new free people to declare their lands themselves, and they will ensure the ownership of these lands, and at the same time, in order to compensate them for the harm they suffered in the war, all taxes are exempted. This war destroyed the Lannister clan, but it also deceived the people in the west. Both the knights in the south and the barbarians in the north have the habit of plundering, which is also the fundamental reason why they obey military orders. If he grasped the military discipline in this area, his army would not be able to take over, so he could only make up for it now. In addition to using the recognition of private ownership of the land to appease the people and stimulate production, Leono also issued corresponding laws for mines in his territory, allowing private contracting and annual fees to be paid, and the mined ore will be purchased by him. Private sale is allowed. The Deep City and the Jiaogu City he obtained were not as rich as the Golden Teeth City and the Silver Mountain City, but they were rich in coal and iron ore, especially the Deep City, where the iron ore veins were extremely rich, which made him salt and iron. The official policy has added another weight. Chapter 84. Leonor worked in the room until late at night, wrote his decrees into a book overnight, and called Daikon and Arad to send them to the place to implement the relevant decrees for him. You have been by my side for a while. I have taught you what you should teach. This time it is a test for you. If it goes well, you will go to different places to be your own side after you come back. Leonor gave 2 personal drawing cake. Your Majesty. Arad held the decree in his hand, his face hesitated. Don't worry, I know what you are going to say. I saved your father back then, and I didn't plan to kill him this time. I asked Earl of Pixter that your father and your brothers are still alive. Leonor knew what Arad wanted to say. Thank you, Your Majesty. Arad couldn't speak and could only kneel down and kowtow. Then do you have anything to say? Leonor did not stop Arad and turned his head to look at Dickon next to him. I am loyal to the king. Dickon's answer was very standard, and it was obvious that it was taught by words and deeds. Very good. Since that's the case, then you can go. Leonor waved his hand. Arad and Dickon set out overnight. Arad went to Deep Crystal City, Dickon went to Corner Valley City, and Leonor personally implemented the laws on Lannister. Obiah and Tyranny, go out to guard me, don't allow anyone to get close. Namelia, come and pinch my shoulders. Leonor sent Obiah and Tyranny away and left alone Namelia. My Majesty, don't you, tonight? Namelia thought Leonor was really tired, and was about to step forward to rub his shoulders, but she didn't want to be caught by his wrist. What's wrong tonight? Leonor dragged Namelia into her arms, feeling her tall and orderly body curves. You're just getting married today. Namelia was so shocked by Leonor's sudden movement that she breathed rapidly. Isn't this more exciting? Don't you want to? Leonor only felt a fever all over his body, and even every invisible thought began to release pink. Everyone was having a feast tonight, and no one would disturb him. I'll do it myself. Namelia found Leonor's hand groping around her waist, as if she was looking for her belt. No, I want to do it myself. Leonor's voice was filled with a wicked smile, which made the atmosphere even more exciting. In Kian City, there were so many clinking, clowns were juggling, singers were singing, and girls danced, accompanied by the surging tides, and all the joy was unusual, including Leonor. When time came to the second half of the night, Leonor asked Anna Amelia to rest well, take care of her clothes, and lead Obiah and Tyranny back to the wedding room with great energy. When he entered the door, he saw two maids guarding him. Let's go. Leonor waved his hand and asked the two maids to leave, then entered the inner room, and saw that Xia Rose had already changed into a green dress waiting for him. Your Majesty. Margaret suppressed her heartbeat, turned around and looked at Leonor, who was wearing black clothes, and stood up and saluted. Yet. Let me see you. Leonor walked straight to Margaret. Compared to Namelia's tall figure and exotic style, Little Rose's body was full of nobility. They have similar figures, but Little Rose is shorter than Anna Amelia and has not had her legs. Next time, I will let Namelia put on armor and battle skirt. Leonor, who approached Margaret, suddenly thought of a way to play. Your Majesty, we can have a bed together. Margaret held her breath in the face of Leonor who was approaching, a little expectant and a little scared. Humph. When Leonor heard Margaret's words, he knew that such a noble girl was inevitably taught by a nanny. She was far from comparable to an ignorant girl. She should have more tricks than Anna Amelia. I heard that Dorne's woman ate too much fire pepper, and she was as enthusiastic as fire. Leonor commented on her personal experience. She was very enthusiastic and was a little unfamiliar in other aspects. Your Majesty. Margaret suddenly snorted coldly when she heard Leonor, and couldn't help but be stunned. What did she do wrong? Leonor turned around and walked to the bed and sat down, and asked Margaret with a cold face. Come to me. Margaret was unable to be fooled by Leonor's appearance, and she was very nervous. What did she do wrong? Come over. The sound of urging again made Margaret even more panicked. There was no way to go, so he could only walk in front of him. Squat down. The weak noble girl followed Leonor's orders, and when she reached a certain point, her eyebrows slowly stretched out, and finally understood what the king was doing. So I like this. Although he was secretly complaining about the king's strange preferences, Margaret had to serve him as he wanted and tried hard to please him. After all, without his seeds, Tyriel's next plan would not be easy to implement. One side should make every effort to obtain seeds, the other side should release their hobbies as much as possible, and everyone should take their needs, and just pass by overnight. The next morning, Leonor got up early, his energy and his body became stronger, thanks to the magic scroll given by Dickon. The dual cultivation method is truly a way to deceive me. Margaret was tossed all night and was still sleeping. Westeros had no custom of returning home and tribute. Leonor did not disturb her, so she put on her clothes and went for a walk. Kian City was quiet in the early morning. After a lively celebration, the whole city was drunk and unsuspecting, but fortunately no one dared to attack here for the most ruthless thing in the world. Leonor led Obiah and Tyranny through the street, and his invisible spiritual thoughts penetrated his body. He swept around frantically and caught a seagull from the air. With a light movement of consciousness, he occupied the black and white seabird's body. Well, this is the feeling of flying. Meow Meow's invisible clouds flowed by, and her wings swayed gently. Leono controlled the seabird's body and flew up and swept down, scanning the bird's eyes below mountains, rivers, and the blue sea ahead. After savoring the feeling of natural flying, Leono retreated from the birds and fell back into the ground's still body. He suddenly flew out, passing through the walls and alleys, flying everywhere, enjoying himself, but he called Oba and Terani, who were following him, knew nothing. Leono was exerting his soul to the fullest. Suddenly he remembered that after returning to his body, he turned his head and asked the two sand snakes behind him. Obaya, Terani, where have you been? We have been to Valentes, Mir, Terasi. Obaya saw Leono walking on the street and suddenly stopped moving, and suddenly asked a question to herself, a little unclear, but answered truthfully, there is a problem. Well, I know, in the name of the mercenary group, right? How about being a mercenary? Leonor nodded. Oberon's Sand Snake Group was the mercenary group he established when he traveled to the city-state of Essos to trade in the city-state of Essos. He also served in the Second Sun Group. It feels not good to be a mercenary. Obai responded depressedly. Do you know where the ferocious birds and beasts are there? Leono asked the question he wanted to ask the most. His soul has reached the possession realm and can already find birds of prey and beasts to practice external incarnation, as long as it is ferocious enough, even if it is still impossible to defeat the fire-breathing dragon, as long as it is restrained and paired with a scorpion crossbow, hunting dragons is no problem. Why are you asking this question? Terani showed a curious look. Haha, I'm just curious. Which birds and beasts do you think are the most ferocious in the world? I mean, you have seen them. Leonor asked. What I've seen should be the snake lizard and the pterodactyl. Terani nodded surely after thinking about it. Chapter 85. In the world where Westeros is located, the dragon that can spit fire, is the strongest creature in the sky and the earth, but there are still some other creatures in other parts of the world, such as the Oriental Essos in the south of the continent. There is a continent called Sotros, wandering with many powerful creatures. On the continent of Essos, except for some lucky sailing adventurers who have arrived in Sosros, they talk about their adventures there and what they have seen and heard. Terani and Obaya have never been to Sotros, but they know that Sotros, the ancestor of the Loinas, Queen Namelia, was defeated by Valilia in the past. He was wandering to Sotros for a while and fought with the natives there, but was driven out by the other party. He eventually had to change the direction of his navigation and finally passed through the Stone Stairs Island to survive in Dorne. In addition to the literature, the Sand Snakes also followed Oberon to Bravos, visited the Neptune there, and saw the living snake lizards and the complete long-winged skeleton in the other party's beast garden. The adult snake lizard is twice as big as a lion, while the long-winged dragon has a body that is almost the same as a giant dragon. It has huge wings and body, a bird-like beak and sharp claws. It is said that its temperament is even more ferocious than that of a giant dragon. The bachelors of the school town analyzed that the ancient Valyrian wizards may have made dragons with long-winged dragons. I really envy you. Your rich experience makes me yearn for sailing in a new continent. Leono couldn't help but have an imagination when he listened to the descriptions of the Sand Snake sisters. The Valyrian wizard used the long-winged dragon to create dragons. This is a good idea. I will not transform it myself, but I can teach the strange beasts to visualize and practice. Can they cultivate their souls in this way, and then become the 8 demons and immortals in the Yangshen world? Voyage? New world? I don't know you. Obaya sneered a little. These nobles were all brain-sick and actually yearned for the experience of staying in a small place every day and night, and the bloody plague that was full of bloody plague land. That's really imaginative, but we don't have much experience, far less than our father. Terani grabbed her unrestrained sister. The king just wanted to say something, don't take it seriously. You said, can you find a dragon in the continent that has not been discovered yet? Leonor had some thoughts again. There was a fog in Sosros. Since there was a long Wedlian, is there any other giant dragon still alive? I don't know. Terani shook her head directly. Who said this is good? Maybe there, maybe not, but I heard that in the north of Sotros, opposite the Saffron Strait of Esthos, there is still there. A new continent that has not been set foot on, and perhaps there is a dragon there, it is impossible to say. Haha, our existence is really small compared to this vast world. Leonor nodded. Whether it is Sotros or the unknown new world, he needs a ship to go there, and he must find a way to develop his national strength. Only when the country is strong can you do whatever you want. With the vastness of the world, Leonor, Obaya, and Tarani walked and chatted in Qian City. On the other side, Margaret, who had recovered, woke up and found the newlywed husband's defeat. Don't, after asking the maid, confirming that he didn't leave him, he breathed a sigh of relief and asked the maid to wash herself up and then go to see her grandmother Olena. Mrs. Olena lives in a courtyard in Qian City. When Margaret came, she was enjoying her own breakfast, some fried eggs and meat porridge made from wheat flour and loin, and figs served with meals. A strange smile appeared on her face when she saw the granddaughter who was radiant to say good morning. My child, it seems you were very happy last night. I feel relieved. In addition to being an excellent king, that child is also a very good man. I mean in bed, an excellent man must not only be able to ride a horse. I also have to ride a woman. Grandma. Margaret's first wedding night, hearing her grandmother's words, she couldn't help but exclaim, her face turned red and she couldn't bear it. What's shy? Well, this is also a normal reaction. When I was as old as you, I thought about the affairs of men and women as sacred. What's that? Love. But my parents made a marriage for me. The other party was Dylan Targaryen, but that guy regarded the opposite sex as heresy, believing that same sex is true love. The crazy Targaryen is not worthy of me. Even if he doesn't do that, I will let this marriage go. It wasn't the end. Olena talked about her old marriage, but Margaret was not impatient at all, and sat next to her with a smile and listened to her. Marguerite, you are a good child. If you get pregnant with the king's child early, your appearance will eventually grow old. Beauty is not your best weapon. Your uterus is. You must use it in time. If that king does not treat you, okay, you just drive him off the Iron Throne and take your child on it. Believe me, this works better than anything else, we are your strongest backing. Olena taught her granddaughter in the tone of someone who has experienced it. Yes, grandmother, but I heard that having a baby hurts. Margaret looked like a childlike fearful attitude. Of course it hurts. If you don't endure hardship, how can you feel the sweetness? Just like last night, you felt it. Olena put on a mysterious smile of an old driver, making Margaret even more shy. Depending on your appearance, that guy is doing very well, let me tell me. Olena became even more interested when she saw her granddaughter's expression. I don't know if he did it on purpose. Margaret couldn't help but have a fever on her cheeks when she thought of her experience last night. What did he do? Olena showed a puzzled face. I can't say it well, it was when he came back last night and ordered me, and the atmosphere made me very scared. He didn't hurt you, right? Olena was shocked when she heard this. The king had no bad habits. No, although he has a stern face, his tone is cold and his actions are rough, he is generally gentle and does not cause any harm to me. Margaret shook his head quickly. Where are you? Olena looked at her granddaughter seriously. Don't you have bad habits, right? Me? It feels very exciting. Margaret recalled her condition carefully and felt a strange feeling, but overall it was not bad. Now, Olena didn't know what to say. She looked up and down with her old eyes, and it took a long time to say. Marguerite, if you suffer any harm, you must tell me in time. I know, grandmother, never stop. Margaret nodded affirmatively and pronounced the tribe of the Terrier family in the River Bay. She is the rose of the high court, and the rose is thorny. Come on, don't shout such old slogans. What's the use of just enduring silently? If you really want to use your thorn to stab people. Olena complained directly. Chapter 86. The wedding ceremony ended, and the noble knights of various nobles began to leave Kai Rock City one after another, including Mrs. Olena and other Tariel family entourages. Only Mess Tariel, who had already taken office as the king's hand and his guards, as well as Oberon, who was in charge of the chief inspector, and his serpent group were left behind. Leonor kept his promise and handed over the city with a golden palace and the residence to Oberon. Oberon didn't care and sealed the city to Oberashad, making her the new one. The Duchess of Qian City, which surprised Leonor a little. He secretly asked Namelia behind his back if they had any discussions. After discussing, my father asked us for our opinions in advance. We agreed that this castle should be inherited by Obaya. She is the oldest and most powerful among us. Namelia answered truthfully. Leono's question. Okay. Leonor had no choice. The sand snakes voted for O by themselves, and he couldn't say anything. Do you want me to get K-Rock City? Namely, noticed Leonor's meaning. It's almost the same. If not, I will find a way to seal the summer hall to you another day. Leonor promised Namlia that she would also give her a duchess. Why? Namlia's grey eyes blinked, feeling a little moved, but she was more confused, why she had to be a duchess. Because, I like the duchess. Leonor said some dirty words, which made Namlia blush at this, and then she stared at him fiercely. This guy is not as slutty as an ordinary noble, but he always likes to play with some weird things. Not to mention Leonor's strange habits, just saying that he continued to stay in the western region, Mess, the new king's hand on the other side, was very impatient. He asked him when he would return to King's Landing, and the Red Fort was the real palace. The place where the king is the palace. Leonor scoffed at Mess's words. Then are you going to stay here forever? Metz was stunned. Of course not. I have to deal with some things now. Lord Mess, you are here just in time. I have something to explain to you. Leonor looked serious. Please give me instructions. Mess came to his senses and stood up and asked Leonor to give in. It was the duty of the king's hand to complete the king's orders. I ask you to start immediately in the governance of the western frontier, including but not limited to the recovery of farming and mining production as soon as possible, and to clear out the remnants of Lannister. The goal of the general mission is to ensure the stability of the western frontier and allow the people here to eat enough. Fortunately, it can continue to export iron ore, coal mine, timber, grain, and other resources to the king. I mean buying and selling, not simply paying tribute to the king. Leonor asked Metz his own governance requirements for the western frontier. Yes. Metz nodded without hesitation and agreed. Do you know where to start? Leonor was a little curious. Don't let the inflatable fish go. I don't know, but I can find people who know to do these things. Metz was full of confidence. Okay, then I'll ask Lord Oberon and his supervisors to supervise your work in the future. Leonor breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, that's it. If you can't do this, then just find a professional person to do it. Leonor suddenly had a task, and Metz didn't care about returning to King's Landing, and began to rush to find someone to start a plan to govern King's Landing. Here, Leonor sent Metz away, asked people to find Oberon, and assigned him a series of tasks to monitor the governance of the Western Front, including but not limited to whether the remnants of Lannister were eliminated, and the new rule here whether the nobles have pursued rebellion, and most importantly, whether the Western Frontier governance activities led by Metz Tiriel are qualified, whether the people are not full, whether the nobles have complaints, etc. I can't supervise the entire western border alone. Oberon frowned when he heard this. He had only one person, how could he complete so many supervision tasks? This is exactly what you are called General Inspector. You need to find someone to organize your own supervision team, use your means to build a monitoring system, and report the situation of western border governance to me in real time. Leonor reminded Oberon that although he had only one person, he could not be alone. This task is too troublesome. Can I let the nobles of Dorne come here to be the inspector? Oberon was not very satisfied and suggested to Leonor that he would transfer people from Dorne. Whatever you want, I just want the result. Leonor doesn't care who Oberon uses, he just wants the result. I understand. Oberon fell into deep thought. Are you going to dispatch people from Dorne? Leonor asked tentatively. What's the use? Will those guys complete the tasks I assigned in this foreign land? I think it's better to use the locals in the west than to use the donors. The Prime Minister's governance actions are directly related to the lives of the people in the west. The actions of Lannister's remnants cannot be counted on them, it requires finding some other people. Perhaps the surrendered western nobles are good. Oberon clapped his hands and began to come up with a solution. Very good, my chief inspector. Leonor clapped his hands directly. Oberon deserves to be the guy who built 6 iron rings in the school town. He has begun to sort out his work ideas and does not need to remind him by himself. Oberon was building his own plan, and looked up and saw Leonor looking happy, a little dissatisfied. I find you're becoming a little annoying now. My Highness, the king is not a clown, and I can't always make you laugh. Leonor laughed loudly, and the laughter kept echoing in the house. As the king, if he couldn't spur his ministers, what's the difference with a clown? Humph. Oberon snorted coldly to express his dissatisfaction, and had to turn around to complete the assigned task. In this way, Leono drove his 2 former ministers to make plans for him, pull up people and teams, and urge the nobles from all over the country to mobilize the people to cultivate farmland and reopen mines, and restore the war to the western border. Destruction and soothe the harm suffered by the people in the western region in the war. After a month of governance, all work in the western region was carried out in an orderly manner, especially Arad and Deccan. The 2 of them carried out very effective governance of Shenjiu city and Jiaogu city, allowing the nearby people to surrender and rebuild farmland. He also found some western knights who had been cut into civilians to contract local iron ore and coal mines. The 2 wrote to Leonor to report the good news, saying that the local mine had officially begun to release mines. Leonor was very satisfied with the results of Arad and Dickon's work. He wrote a letter to encourage the 2 to continue to work and let them connect with Dorit in King's Landing to the handover between the iron ore and the coal mine, and not to treat those things unfairly. The Westerners who contracted the mines could promise to restore their knighthood and mobilize them appropriately. After sorting out the series of work in the western region, Leono basically had no worries and began to organize the army and prepare to return to King's Landing city. Chapter 87. When Leonor came, he walked out of the Golden Avenue from the Lion's Gate of King's Landing, then passed through the deep crypto city to Lannister Harbor, and finally broke through Kian City. When he returned to King's Landing, his queen, prime minister, and chief inspector, and most of the troops still returned to King's Landing from this road, but he did not follow this road. Leonor chose to start from the east gate of Kian City on the route back to King's Landing, along Hegian Avenue, cross the Golden Tooth City to the River City, and then return to King's Landing through Herrenberg. This route is a bit circling, but the advantage is that he can go to Ben Leocan to meet the princes of the northern border and confirm the life and death of Ed Stark and his wife, and whether Robb Stark and his northern border princes had any. The heart of the minister. With such a goal, he set out with 50 guards including Brienne, Obiah, Terran, and Namelia. When Leono marched west from Golden Avenue, it was difficult to see ordinary civilians along the way except for the riots. However, this time from Hegian Avenue to the east, the west, which had been managed, has recovered a lot of complexion. There are already farmers on both sides of the avenue. Work. Those pale and thin farmers used simple wooden farm tools to cultivate fields and plant crops such as wheat, oats, hops and grapes. When they stopped working, they were full of vigilance for Leono and his party who had passed by. Your Majesty, your kindness allows them to work again. Although Brienne was warned by the farmer, she was rarely happy and flattered Leonor from the bottom of her heart. Leonor ignored Brienne and retracted his gaze of the field, where he saw the green wheat seedlings, the sharp vines and the hop seedlings. In the eyes of Brienne and others, the ability of farmers to work in the fields with peace of mind is the knight fulfilling his duties to defend the land, and the manifestation of the mercy of the king and the nobles, but in Leonor's view, this is not the case. Leono presided over farming production in the Midsummer Hall. After the farmers there got their fields, they would not grow hops and grapes that were not edible. Even wheat and oats were grown in less. They could grow pumpkins and corn. Because pumpkin and corn grow cycles short, it can provide a large amount of food in the short term. Only after storing enough grain, farmers will choose to grow wheat, oats, and then mix pumpkin, corn and chickpeas, because the excess grain can be used to feed livestock. How much meat the livestock grows, wheat and oats can not only make wine, but also improve food, but they only need to be processed at the Lord's mill. Farmers know what they want and how to farm, but what about now? The western region has just experienced war. The farmers will not know how to farm, nor will they not know that the most important thing to do is to protect the food first, but they planted acre of hops and grapes. These crops can only make wine, but not the only reason to fill your stomach is that the lords ask for it, and they have no right to decide what to plant in the field. Policies must be set up to correct this situation, while continuing to deprive the nobles of ownership of the land. Those insects' own land is a waste. It's a pity that the climate in Westeros is judging by years. As long as it is not the winter year, as long as it is not the area in the northern region that requires cold-resistant crops, you can farm all year round, as long as it is not the kind of land-picking climate. Crops can be planted at any time. Sitting and guarding such a treasure land, Westeros is recognized as the most populous King's Landing city, with a total population of only 500,000, and the total population of the entire continent is estimated to not exceed 10 million. It has been more than 10,000 years since the ancestors arrived in this land. After 10,000 years of development, the total population of the mainland has not exceeded 10 million. What is the aristocrats who ruled here? How can they do it when they are with the insects? Good country! He cursed the noble worm in his heart, but unfortunately this matter was not easy to resolve in a short period of time. Leonor used his heel to lightly knock the horse under his crotch, urging the horse's hoofs to speed up the trip. Except for the Deep Crypt City, Cock Valley City, Lannister Harbour and Oxford Town in the west, all other places have been rewarded, and the nobles who obtained the land will reward their own land to other nobles or knight. Under such heavy sharing, a feudal system was formed that the vassal of my vassal is not my vassal. Even the king can only govern his own territory, and can only give some suggestions or guidance to other territories, and cannot even say order. Now the new ruler of the western region is actually considered obedient and has governed the fiefdom of the western region according to Leono's requirements. He cannot even point fingers at how others farm or mine, so this matter needs to be discussed in the long term. Leono only brought 50 cavalry to travel, and did not want to cause trouble, so he chose to be invisible. He led his men to ride the horse forward. After about half an hour, a team of about 10 people rushed towards the road ahead. The full-armoured knights were holding a flag with a 7-pointed sword. Well! Leono saw the flag in front of him, directly held the horses and waited and stopped the team to avoid rushing with the other party. When the knights in the distance saw the situation, they also held the horses. After a burst of shouts, the two teams slowly approached. I am Aldous Bran, the knight of Count Rogmer in Gold Fang. The leader of the cavalry was a young man, and he nodded to Leonor immediately and reported his name. Baratheon, the king leads the knight, went to the city of Boré to visit Duke Horst Tully. Lord Bran, where are you going? Leonor stopped Brienne's name. Action, he made up his identity for himself. There are few people around him now. If he cannot show his identity, try not to show his identity and avoid attracting assassination. I am very honored to see you. I am also on the orders of Count Rogmer to go to the nearby manor to hunt a crazy beast. Knight Aldous saw the rights and told him where he was. So that's the case. Can I go with you? Leonor was intrigued. He remembered that Rihan Rogmer was originally an ordinary knight in Hegian, but he was rewarded for killing the original lord of Golden Tooth City. He had already pulled up his team and completed the governance of the fiefdom. What kind of person is this? Aren't you carrying the king's order? Aldous frowned. It's right. The king also issued an order to me, asking me to observe the governance results of the Western Front. This does not conflict with the mission of visiting the Duke of Horst, and can be carried out at the same time. Leonor directly found a reason for himself. So that's the case. If so, then you can go to Bader Manor with me. Aldous suddenly realized, glanced at Leonor and his party in full armed manner, thinking that it might be good to bring them with him. In this way, Leonor turned his horse's head halfway and went to the Bader Manor with Aldous, the Knight of Goldeth. On the way, Leonor found out about the situation from Aldous, and knew that the young knight was originally a hedge knight, and was rewarded for his bravery in combat. This time he was assigned to clean up the madness in his manor for the Lord Count Rogmer. Wild beast! What kind of person is Count Rogmer? Leonor asked about Rogmer's situation. Lord Lihan is a devout believer of the 7 gods, and is also a loyal and brave knight. As a vassal knight, Aldous did not hesitate to appreciate the lord, but as he spoke, he suddenly sighed, except for the Lord's day. A little obsessed with women. Who doesn't yearn for love? Leonor smiled. How can obsessed with women be considered a shortcoming? As long as it is not strong, it is just human nature. But he... Aldous subconsciously wanted to say something, but suddenly realized that this was the king's knight, and he could not talk about the lord's affairs everywhere, which was not in line with the knight's creed, so he hurriedly stayed. Leave your mouth. Sir Aldous, you don't trust me? Leonor saw that Aldous had no scheming, but he had a good impression of Rogmer, but he was still curious about Rogmer's affairs. Judging from the words of the young knight, that guy seemed to like it. It's so gossipy for someone you shouldn't like. Chapter 88. Knight Aldous was a young man. He had no scheming, otherwise he would not have leaked the matter of the lord. Leonor said a few words next to him and coaxed him to tell the matter out. Rogmer did fall in love with someone he shouldn't like, the most beautiful daughter of Lord Wade Frey, Earl of Twins, who has been betrothed to Rosalind Frey, the young wolf owner of Northland. What a guy, I like the big wolf woman. Leonor was surprised at first when he heard the news of Aldous' gossip, and then pondered, as if it was a little wrong. Due to his appearance, Robb Stark did not embark on the original path of fate and died tragically in the bloody wedding. His engagement with Rosalind Frey continued, and the covenant between North and twins was strengthened. The northern border is a special place in Westeros, which is at the northernmost end of the existing country of mankind. The environment is very harsh, and roads to the south are blocked by the Swamped Neck and Twin Cities. Not to mention Neck Snake, the Leda family there is already loyal to Winterfell City. Now the Frey family in Twin City has formed an alliance with Stark. That does not mean that as long as the princes in the northern border are willing, they can take troops south at any time. No more resistance. The Tully family in the river-flowing city was wearing a pair of pants with Stark. The princes in the East Valley were swaying. If there was a rebellion in the north, after the army was driven south, these people would have already been able to join them. The power to shake the country. I was negligent, I was always thinking about cleaning up Lannister and guarding against the Tyrion family, but I forgot about the existence of the Wolf Osprey. Leonor realized it later and said he was careless in his heart, and then began to think of a solution. Master Burrow. Aldous called Leonor with a little nervousness. What's wrong, my lord Aldous? Leonor came to his senses and asked Aldous with a smile. If I tell you, don't tell others. Aldous reminded him with a little nervousness. Swear in the name of the 7 gods. Leonor pointed at the 7 gods without hesitation, and said to Brienne, Obiah, and others who were staring behind him with big eyes, you are not allowed to tell this matter out loud either. Brienne and others nodded in agreement, but Aldous on the other side turned green. He turned to look at his companions and saw that these people looked different. Aldous is your companion, please don't betray him. Leonor saw Aldous' ugly face and turned his head to ask his companions. Of course. The Knights of Goldfang City all agreed that no matter what they would do, they would agree not to disclose it now. Seeing that Leonor had dealt with his companions, Aldous' face looked much better, but after learning from this lesson, he did not dare to talk more on the way and led Leonor and his companions to the Bader Manor. Bader Manor is a manor belonging to Rogmer, the Earl of Goldtooth City. The main body is a piece of land sealed with wooden fences, which contains several thatched houses and a few small houses. They live in about dozens of villagers. The villagers took care of the large area of land around them. They originally planted beets, grapes, and other crops for the Lord, but now the land is deserted and everyone is hiding in the house. After Aldous brought his men into the fenced house, he immediately found the manor's supervisor and asked him where the crazy beast was. That's a group of monsters. The sparse head of the head corrected the statement first, they are a group of wolves that are not afraid of humans. Several of us have gone out and been attacked. Last night, a giant wolf with yellow eyes rushed forward to it. Entering the village, it was as big as a horse, and it dragged Ricci away directly. The 7 gods were on it. When we found him, his whole stomach was empty. The boss kept drawing 7 pointed stars on his chest, obviously because he was afraid of being anxious. It seemed as if to prove the boss's words, a whimpering wolf howl came from outside the village. Under the blue sky and the sun, the sound of wolf howlings came, making people feel chilled indoors. Aldous looked at the direction where the sound of wolf howlings came, and showed a look of surprise on his face, shocked that the beasts dared to provoke humans so much. As the same size as a horse, are you sure? Leonor confirmed to the boss. Yes, it is definitely as tall as a horse, and swears in the name of the 7 gods. The boss pointed at the 7 gods and swore that he did not lie. It's a dire wolf outside the Great Wall. Leonor ignored the boss and explained to Aldous that a wolf as big as a horse is a dire wolf, a species outside the Great Wall in the north. The Stark family is exactly the same as that of a horse. Use this wolf as the family emblem and flag. I know, I have seen such a wolf. Beside Robb Stark, it must be brought by those northern barbarians. In the name of knights, I must kill the beast and peel it off. Aldous spitted. Do you have experience in dealing with dire wolf? Leonor asked. No. Aldous and his companions all shook their heads. Where are you? Leonor turned around and asked Brienne, Obiah, and others. No, but I've dealt with the wolves on my way to Valentes. Obiah said that she had experience in dealing with the wolves. That's easy to do, think of a way. Kill all these wolves as much as possible, especially the dire wolf. Leonor asked Obiah to find a way. This is easy to deal with. We have swords, spears, bows, and armor. Just find a living person to be bait and attract those animals. Obiah's answer was very concise. Her words, the eyes of others outside Leono naturally looked at the trembling old housekeeper. No! Aldous shouted before Leonor, rejecting most people's ideas. This matter was handed over to me by Lord Earl. How can I let others replace it? Let me be the bait. Leono originally proposed to use horses as bait, but when he saw Aldous take the initiative to ask for bait, he couldn't help but look at him with admiration. This guy was a little brave. You really want to go? Aldous' companion was suspicious. Leono shook Obaya a wink, telling her not to speak for the first time, and intimidated Aldous with bad taste. Deidelvan is very smart. He needs to take off his armor and be used as bait. And he can't bring weapons, otherwise he will definitely not be able to draw it out. I'll go. Aldous was a little scared, but he gritted his teeth and nodded. Haha. Leonor smiled, it was quite interesting. Master Burrow, why are you laughing? Aldous was embarrassed to be laughed. Go and bring my horse. Leonor did not answer, but instead asked a guard to lead the horse. Your horse? Aldous was unknown. It's better to use my horse as bait. Leonor pointed at the yellow strong horse led by the guards. This is a good horse. How much does it cost? Aldous looked at the yellow war horse led by the guards and was attracted suddenly. He couldn't help swallowing his saliva. A horse with smooth lines and strong hooves. Courage is comparable to all. Leono smiled. There are many horses, but few people with courage. Chapter 89. Courage is comparable to everything. Leonor made Aldous blush with one sentence, and the other knights looked at each other, showing various expressions, some of whom were jealous, some admired, and some disapproved. No matter what, the problem of bait was solved. After discussion, the plan to hunt and kill the wolf pack was determined. The young knight Aldous did not use it as bait, so he tried his best to let him and his brothers attack. He claimed that he would chop the giant wolf with his own hands, and Leonor agreed. Because he lacked a mount, Leonor did not go hunting wolves with him, but stayed behind, stood at the fence gate of the village, and watched Aldous and others drive his mount into the woods. He looked at him with his eyes with a slight closure. The soul naturally leaves the body, and quickly passes through the fields and enters the dense forest. He did not borrow the body of the yellow horse. His transparent soul naturally floated in the air. He watched the leisurely horse eat the grass in the forest. When the thoughts moved, his soul naturally dispersed, but the thoughts expanded like ripples. Soon, his mind found a grey wolf in a dense tree somewhere. It was an adult wolf. It was lying under the tree to bask in the sun. Suddenly, his ears moved, his head raised and his nose moved, and he smelled the wind. The smell of smell comes. Following the smell of the wind, the grey wolf jumped into the dense forest and found the yellow horse gnawing on the grass in the forest. The beast did not attack immediately. It shook its nose and found the human being peeping in the distance. Then it directly turned around and slip away. It's very smart. Leonor hung in the air, his figure transparent like a ghost. He watched the grey wolf slip away from him, and his thoughts followed its footsteps, as he walked through the rocks of the forest, go to a stream. Around the stream, about hundreds of wolves were playing. When they saw the grey wolf return, they were slightly turbulent and squeezed over to sniff and whisper at it. The grey wolf put away his ears and used a pair of them. He squeezed through the pack of wolves with a well-behaved look and came to a rock above the water where a grey wolf the size of a horse was staying. The huge grey wolf lies on the rock, with elegant figures, and two white wolves with different figures far exceeding their peers were playing in front of it. White wolf slightly smaller than it was squeezed beside it, constantly using its head its a whole family to please. The giant wolf was half closing his eyes, enjoying the happiness of the family, and lazily glanced at the tribe. When its eyes glanced at the grey wolf crowd, its golden eyes suddenly opened wide, and all its hair stood. He raised his black lips, revealing his white fangs, and his eyes were straight on the grey wolf that was coming, or Leono above the grey wolf. See me! Leonor floated over the wolf pack, and was surprised to see the giant wolf who was angry and staring at him. The wolf cub could see his possessed realm. There is something in the soul. The giant wolf stood up from the rock, spitting out a threatening roar, warning the empty soul not to approach. This is not possible. You have already started to eat people. How can I keep you from harming the world again? Leono ignored the threat of the giant wolf, and his soul drifted closer to him. Ah! The giant wolf could no longer bear the invisible soul approaching, and its bodies jumped violently, and its fangs spread wide and bit the approaching ghost. The invisible soul cannot be bitten, but in Leonor's sight, an invisible heat rose from the giant wolf's body, which contained a brutal and greedy aura. With its thrust, it was like a steel knife. Punch your mind. If it is the soul of an ordinary person, he will be injured just this time. After returning to the body, he will feel nauseous and vomiting, and his eyes will be filled with Venus. Fortunately, Leonor is not an ordinary person. When Leonor faced the evil spirit that was rushing to face, he blew out a yin wind, which was blown away the blood evil spirit of the beastly mixed with chi and blood like a steel knife. Bang! The giant wolf pounced on the ground and fell to the ground. The hair that had originally exploded suddenly became dark and dull, and the whole wolf shook like a dog falling into the water. After a while of rest, the giant wolf regained its energy, and its hair shook again, rolling around like a steel needle, and pounced on Leonor again, but he stopped playing with the beast. Let's go first. Leonor was too lazy to attach to the beast's body, and his body shook and ran away in the cold wind. Ah! The giant wolf was teased out of its fierceness. Seeing the invisible thing flying away in the air, it was unwilling to let go. It directly made a wolf howl, which caused the wolf pack to respond one after another, and then began to pursue it in a mighty manner. Animals are animals. Leonor glanced at it, and saw the timber wolves howling one after another. He couldn't help but shake his head. With a moving thought, his soul dissipated instantly. At the entrance of the village, Leonor's soul returned to his body and opened his eyes. He first listened to the wolf howlings that were rising and falling in the distance, and then rushed to Brienne next to him for a bow and arrow. His mount was taken as bait, and the bow and arrow weapons on it were held in his hands by Brienne, Obaya, and others. After getting a bow and arrow from Brienne, Leonor came to the entrance of the village and saw a rustling in the dense forest at the entrance of the village from afar. There were even shouts of scolding from afar, followed by the muffled sound of swords and body attacks. After a while of chaos, some wolves jumped out of the dense forest, some fled with their tails, and some surrounded animals. Among them, the largest grey dire wolf, with his eyes open, and directly headed towards Leonor at the entrance of the village. Run over! Humph! Leonor saw the giant wolf standing upright with grey hair, snorted coldly, and drew the big red and white bow into a full moon. When the giant wolf approached, the bowstring in his hand blew, and the arrow snorted. Fly out! The giant wolf running quickly fell to the ground, and fell a few times. Finally, it rolled softly into a farmland. It was rolled up on its head, and a feather arrow was inserted into its right socket. Most of the arrow shaft was stuttered. Wearing the brain stem. It's really good. Leonor shot the giant wolf with an arrow and looked forward and saw that the giant wolf's fur was not cut, and it was even the fluffy that was angry before death. He couldn't help but nodded slightly. Yes, good materials. Master Burrow. Aldous came over from a distance. His armor was covered with wolf blood, and the sword he was holding was even more bloody, and he obviously killed a lot. Sorry, I shot this beast to death. Leonor raised the red and white recurved bow in his hand at Aldous. Your mount was bitten to death. Aldous did not answer, but only smiled bitterly. It's enough to compensate. Leonor patted the corpse of the dire wolf. This dire wolf is considered an alien species. In addition, the fierce aura on its body is excellent for use as a refining material. The fur can be made into a fight. The body protects the body. Bones and wolf teeth can also be made into arrows or other magic weapons that can shoot souls. If you can capture the fire alive and offer it, you will definitely be able to quench a top-quality sword. You can take it. Aldous felt relieved when he saw Leonor not pursuing the mount. Chapter 90. The crazy beast is faster and more fierce than humans, and has sharp minions, but this is useless. No matter how strong the minions cannot penetrate steel, it is in vain. No matter how fierce the spirit is, it will be defeated when facing the steel knife and the iron sword. Hundreds of wolves of size were surrounded by more than 50 knights. After a while, only a few lucky wolves escaped, and all the others were killed. There were a few cars of corpses loaded, and the largest one, the ice row wolf. The farm car in the manor could not hold its body at all, so Leonor could only ask the guards to peel it on the spot. The dismantled dire wolf, the wolf meat was distributed to the farmers of the Bader manor, and the fur and bones were wrapped up and rolled up by Leonor. Because the mount was bitten to death by the wolves when he set off again, Leonor rode with Namelia, and he had to rush under the noses of the riders who were walking with him, which was very exciting and enjoyable. He planned to buy another mount after he arrived in Goldwood City, and then enter the river to go to the River City, but when he arrived in Goldwood City, he got new news through Aldous. Duke of Horse Tully in the Flowing City has passed away, and his grandson, Robb Stark, did not catch up with his funeral, because the Callan Bay of the Nexarid family was 2 weeks ago by the Iron Captain of the Iron Islands. Victor Ryan Greyjoy led his army to capture it. Next, Callan Bay is the only channel connecting the north and the south. The back road of my hometown was cut off. Robb Stark led his army back north overnight. He didn't even care about his parents who were unknown to life and death, let alone dying of illness. Grandfather. 2 weeks ago, Leono calculated the time. At that time, he was still besieging Kian City. Now the Northern Army has returned to Callan Bay. He only learned the news when he arrived in Golden Tooth City. The transmission efficiency of the news was too slow. I missed the princes in the northern border. Leono realized it later and felt a little regretful, but he was more contemplating how he would deal with the Stark family and other princes in the northern border. At this time, the princes of the northern border did not come except Luce Bolton of the Horror Fort, including Robb Stark himself, and the Frey family in the Twin City they actively won over. If the Iron Islands captured Callan Bay, then the northern border from the south was unobstructed, which in his opinion was the manifestation of the unjust intention. Leonor believes in Ed, who has a high moral level, but he does not agree with his way of doing things. Robb Stark does not even have the morality of his father, so how can people believe him? In particular, there are rumors that he had made several engagements in Hedgeondi. It is rumored that Robb Stark not only married Rosalind Frey himself, but also married his sister Sansa to Lor Asteriel of the Duriel family, and made his cousin Robert Aijr. Lynn married his young sister Arya. Leonor will be skeptical about this rumor. If Robb Stark really proposes an engagement with the Duriel family and the Ellen family, they are likely to agree to it. The Duriel family will need help to consolidate Margaret's queen status, and the eastern border will also need the northern border as a backing. The princes of the northern border have retreated, the old Tully is dead, and Edmure automatically succeeds as Duke of Benliu City, and it is no longer interesting to go there. Faced with various situations, Leono decisively chose to terminate his trip, bought a mount from Goldeo City and began to lead the team back to King's Landing City. No matter how the princes marry an ally, strengthening themselves is his best way to respond. When Leonor left, Aldous, the Knight of Goldfang City, came to see him off, thanked him for helping him in the Bader Manor, and asked if he could come to King's Landing to find him. Under the tree at the intersection of Hedgian Avenue, Leono saw Aldous wanting to go to King's Landing City, and asked with a smile. "What are you going to go to King's Landing?" "Mr. Boluo, the war between His Majesty the King to conquer the Western Front has ended. The knight's courage is useless here. I want to go to King's Landing to take a look." Aldous was open and did not hide his thoughts. He is still very young and wants to go around and see if he can find a better lord. Along the way, the young knights could still see the difference between Leonor. This guy brought more than 50 fully armed minions, and there were also female knights. This was not a team that ordinary nobles could have. Haha. Leonor saw Aldous say it bluntly, smiled but said nothing, turned around and waved to Brienne, asked for a bag of golden dragons from her, and handed it directly to Aldo in front of Si. "This." The young knight was stunned by the purse handed over by Leonor. "Please keep it. Young knight, you must understand that your courage will never be extinguished by need. A man can always come forward when he needs it." Leonor said less than 50 of them. The golden dragon was put in Aldos's hands and reminded, these golden dragons are used to strengthen themselves. Brave is of course important to the knights, but knowledge is even more essential. The wise and brave knight is the future of the kingdom. Feeling the heavy money bag in his hand and listening to the man in front of him, the young knight Aldous couldn't help but feel his eyes soar. He wanted to say something grateful, but found that he couldn't speak at all. A person will encounter many things in his life. In short, you must stay brave and nothing can stop you. Leonor clenched his fists at Aldous to motivate him. "Yes, my lord." Aldous nodded in tears. He felt that no one had been so good to him since he was a child. "Okay, let's go, remember, strengthen your knowledge, see you in King's Landing." Leonor patted Aldous, left the goodbye period, turned around and called Brienne and others to leave, leaving only the youth. The knight looked away from the tree by the roadside. The team slowly walked away, and when the young knight behind him was only a small dot left, Brienne leaned forward and asked Leonor in curiosity. "Really? Your Majesty? What's true or false? Leonor was stunned by the female knight's sudden question. The future of the kingdom requires a wise and brave knight. Brienne was very serious. Of course, wise and brave people are always the future. Leonor answered affirmatively, but the premise is that they will not die and have good opportunities. Otherwise, they will be as talented as Zhuge Wolong, and they will have to be in Nanyang if they don't meet Lu Xianzu. Work hard. Then I need to learn knowledge, too. Brienne was very serious. Okay, I'll arrange for you to study with Balistan. Do you still have to be a royal guard? Leonor nodded and asked Brienne whether she was keeping her original intention. Of course, my heart remains unchanged. Brienne hurriedly expressed her intentions, and her original intention was unshakable. That's even better. Balistan is also the captain of the Royal Guard. There are some positions vacant in the Royal Guard. Next, I will ask for additional information. You have a chance. Leonor drew a cake for Brienne. I haven't started learning yet, is this job? Brini was a little nervous. Of course there is no problem. Leonor was amused by Brienne's appearance. In his opinion, the Royal Guard had no value at all. The new Royal Guard would be good at loyalty and command ability, and Brienne's loyalty would definitely meet the standards.